Chapter 94. Luonan sat quietly. He stared at the mostly empty 5-level pyramid and continued to deduce his conclusions. The same pyramid can contain vastly different contents. This is probably because the standards are completely different. The previous stratification was just a simple reconstruction of the structure of society. Therefore, everyone could be placed within it. But this kind of structure did not have a clear and precise location for each individual. It was like a pile of spare parts. No matter how large or complete they could not be assembled into a complete functional machine. It was meaningless. The current stratification standard is simple and crude. Does it belong to me? Under this simple logic, all existences unrelated to me will be cleared out. As for what counts as related, obviously, it has to be directly related to the self-format. Only then will it be included in this system. The software interface continued to undergo changes as his logical thinking advanced layer by layer. The heavily chained crow was like a giant python shuttling back and forth within the 5-level pyramid structure. But no matter how it moved, it always maintained a connection with Xie Junping, cat eyes, and the wraith sign. The heavily chained crow was the symbol of my heart's a prison. It was the materialization of the self-format. Luonan had once used the heavily chained crow to destroy the human-faced arachnid's clone for Xie Junping. Cat eyes had once collided with Luonan's psychic diagram and was countered by the heavily chained crow. As for the wraith sign, it had always been under the control of the heavily chained crow. These scenes flashed through Luonan's mind one by one. They became footnotes for his inferences. Of course, there were differences between the three. This difference was reflected in the division of levels. Xie Junping and Cat Eyes were on the student level. According to formatting theory, they did not make any contributions to the social format. They were learners, who received one-way indoctrination. Though Xie Junping had stood up for Luonan and Cat Eyes had released her deep memories of Luonan, that was a change in orientation after entering the formatting system. Luonan was completely unable to obtain any direct benefits from the bodies of these two people. And if major stimuli were to appear, they would likely refuse Luonan's indoctrination. They would walk out of the format pyramid and part ways with Luonan. As for the wraith sign, it was completely like Luonan's dog. It would bite whoever it was told to bite. Speaking of which, its loyalty was off the charts. It also possessed extremely powerful abilities. More importantly, Luonan was able to obtain direct benefits from its body. The benefits he obtained were even higher than the benefits he could obtain from purely relying on the training of his body. The results of devouring the human-faced arachnid's avatar had already proven this point. Therefore, the wraith sign entered the technician level. But the problem was that it didn't have any self-awareness, so it couldn't rise to the level of self-awareness. This level was already its limit. Luonan suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity as his thoughts reached this point. He felt as if he had seen such a clear hierarchy, gradually deepening connection, and feedback pattern somewhere before. He searched through his memories, and the relevant scenes were fixed in his grandfather's ferocious roar. Luonan pressed his forehead. His fingertips moved, and a certain word suddenly smashed into his brain. It was hard to get rid of it. Temple, God Nation, New God, Old God, God? In Grandpa's crazy talk, the word God appeared very frequently and occupied a very central position. In the past, Luonan would not have cared. But now that his horizons had been broadened, it was hard for his thoughts to remain pure. He closed his eyes. In reality, he connected to the psychic wave network through the hexa ear and entered the interface of the professional association. Then he searched for the secret orders entry, focusing on finding information related to their organizational structure. Soon, a large amount of information poured out. It seemed that the psychic wave network of the society wasn't designed to be too powerful in terms of intelligent filtering. Luonan could only search and comb through the information with great difficulty. This lasted until there was a paragraph that attracted his attention. The vast majority of the founders of secret orders were unavoidably influenced by the existing culture of society. They often used ancient myths, mainstream religions, and historical legends as references when they first established the basic structure of their sections. They even used novels and games as models. They painted their sects with all sorts of fantastical colors and designed strict ranks. The specific concepts are vastly different. When examining the secret orders that have existed for over 10 years, One must admit that they have, to a large extent, a convergence that makes one raise an eyebrow has appeared. Especially in terms of organizational structure. The three great world secret orders seem to coincidentally divide their internal personnel into 4 ranks. Although the names are all different, the meanings within are very similar. I have unified them as shallow believer, devout believer, fanatic believer, and favored. As the names imply, the believers of these 4 ranks have different degrees of devotion and devotion toward the God. And the gifts and rewards they receive from the God are different as well. Facts can prove that the God and the first ablatum are true to the various ranks of believers. The offerings, demands, and feedback they receive from the God are real and not false. There is a strict hierarchy of judgment. They possess a similar but strict and feasible logic, forming a system that is still stable to this day. Luo Nan felt that this article was very much to his liking after reading halfway. It just so happened to answer his question, so he paid special attention to the author's name. He didn't expect the author to be quite familiar. Bamboo pole? If it wasn't the same name, then this person was the skinny and tall person who was in charge of intelligence work during the operation on the night of the 28th. Luo Nan remembered that this person always had a cheeky smile on his face, but his words were very sharp. Luo Nan's impression deepened and he matched this person's description with his own situation. Now he finally understood where the sense of familiarity came from. The 4 levels of the secret order's structure. Of course, it was possible that this was a definition borrowed from a certain novel or a certain game. It seemed to be completely comparable to the format pyramid. Although the format pyramid had 5 levels, the highest level, politician, had a rather special definition. It represented the subversion and denial of the entire format. It could be ignored for the time being. The next 4 levels were quite reliable. If he looked at it this way, then his grandfather's formatting theory, or at least the level of the social format, was also a kind of ability explanation system. And it leaned towards the standpoint of the secret order? Then what was the current him? Was he some malnourished god? Luo Nan rubbed his forehead even harder. Tired? We're almost home. His uncle suddenly spoke. Luo Nan went, ah. He jumped out of his thinking mode. It seemed that his attitude just now had made his uncle and aunt even more worried. He thought for a bit and pursed his lips in a feigned relaxed manner. I'm not tired. I'm just a bit hungry. His uncle grunted and turned to speak to his aunt. It's late to go home and cook. Should we let old Mo make a nutritious meal, or should we deal with it outside? Mo Pang cried out in fright. Heavens! Don't trouble him. Chapter 95. Old Mo was the family's AI housekeeper. Since he had carelessly chosen to lean towards environmental protection, this AI's cooking menu forever lacked high-fat and high-protein options. Moreover, the nutritious meals he made were more like medicine than food. Old Mo's uncle and aunt weren't averse to this. They didn't mind occasionally slacking off and tasting fresh food. But for Mo Pang, he would rather drink plain water. Luo Nan also felt that it would be best for him, who had consumed large amounts of mental power, to strengthen his nutritional supplements. Seeing the troubled expressions of the 2 youngsters, Luo Nan's uncle readily agreed. Then we'll settle it outside. There's a new restaurant nearby that's pretty good. As he spoke, he used the car's AI to order food online. His luck wasn't bad. Even though he had already entered the bustling Xia City district and it was mealtime, he still successfully placed the order. The SUV cut into another lane and entered the light track of a certain skyscraper. It began to gradually rise to the traffic level. Xia City had 20 transportation layers from the ground to the sky. Aside from the 5 layers that were used by specialized flying machines, the remaining 15 transportation layers mostly used the light rails that bypassed the various high-rise buildings in the city to realize the switching and distribution of the layers. Every night, the outer layers of many skyscrapers would light up like spiraling neon lights. Tens of thousands of flying cars would shuttle back and forth, forming a seemingly never-ending stream of light. It was filled with the beauty of order. Luo Nan continued to read the rest of Bamboo Pole's words, and the word order was mentioned. We've observed the secret orders. The vast majority of them, from top to bottom, show signs of irrationality. But within and between every order, a high degree of unity and order is ultimately manifested. It makes one suspect that all irrational things are stuffed into a hard, firm, and tight framework. Or perhaps it's a kind of magical machine. Irrational raw materials are filled in, and the product is order. I can't find any other explanation for this besides a complete ability explanation system. We can match the secret order's ability explanation system with the society's internal ability explanation system. Shallow believers correspond to unawakened ability users. Devout believers correspond to awakened ones. Fanatics correspond to engineers. Favored correspond to extraordinaries. Basically, the ability levels are quite compatible. Is this the ability explanation system's different routes lead to the same goal? If this is the case, the society will be very happy to sit down with the secret order and eat breakfast together. But in reality, the church's explanation system still had serious differences with that of the association. The society, the church, and even the burners. What does the coexistence of two or even more systems mean? Have we only seen one side of the truth, or is the world like a sandwich? Or simply a 1,000-layer cake? There's another layer to unravel. It's just a matter of how you want to eat it. Bamboo Pole's article was very long. Luonan only read the gist of it. However, the main point was still very clear. It was to discuss the opposing system between the association and the secret orders, and to correct some people's belittling of the secret orders. However, Luonan's feelings had deviated a bit from Bamboo Pole's goal of writing this article. I seem to have entered the wrong door. Luonan felt a small sense of absurdity. No matter how he looked at it now, his own formatting theory leaned more towards the direction of the secret orders. Like Xie Junping and Cat Eyes, weren't they shallow believers? Another example would be the Wraith Sign, who was a fanatic. The standard of the societal format was more like the typical structure of the secret orders, with God as the center. If the facts proved that his self-logic and the ability explanation system advocated by the society had a serious deviation, then what was the point of him joining the society? Of course, Luonan wanted to know why his grandfather's theory would form such a close correspondence with the secret order system. Was it a coincidence? Or was it some other reason? Luonan's doubts were destined not to be answered in a short amount of time. The family had already arrived at the restaurant. They were guided by the waiter to their reserved seats and sat down. The restaurant's environment was pretty good. It had antique wooden window partitions, allowing light to pass through and emphasizing privacy. Even though there were quite a few people eating, it was relatively quiet. Luo Shuqing was quite satisfied. The place you chose is pretty good. This kind of environment was a bit old-fashioned for youngsters. Mo Peng wasn't interested in the surrounding decorations. He lowered his head and played his game after ordering. Luonan went to the bathroom. His train of thought had hit a bottleneck. It was hard not to be preoccupied. He kept his head down the entire way, ignoring the things around him. But when he was washing his hands, someone beside him called out in a probing manner, "Mr. Luo?" Luonan was startled. He raised his head and saw that the person was around 40 years old. His figure was tall and sturdy, and he looked capable and calm. Luonan just felt that the person looked familiar. He thought about how he was addressed, and only then did he remember that the only people who could call him by this name were those who participated in the operation on the 28th. Yes, this person was one of the 4 bodyguards Yuan had brought with her that day. He was responsible for looking after Shui Lei, Black Wolf, and the other injured people. He was a very steady person. However, Luonan couldn't remember his name no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't help feeling a bit embarrassed. This bodyguard was experienced in the ways of the world. He smiled and extended his hand to introduce himself. "Zhou Hu. I didn't greet Mr. Luo that day. My apologies." Luonan hurriedly called out, "Brother Zhou." He was a bit baffled. "Brother Zhou is here? Is Sister He here as well?" "Nope. I'm off today. I'm here for a private gathering. A group of old comrades." "All right. Cragburst is here as well." "Huh." Luonan's impression of Cragburst, who was also in the society, was much deeper. Cragburst was a valiant close combat expert. He existed as Luonan's protector during the later stages of the operation. Even though Cragburst didn't have the opportunity to truly display his strength, the 2-meter-tall giant gave Luonan a sense of security. Luonan even added Cragburst as a friend through the Hexa ear. "You guys are comrades? We've tested each other before. We don't have a deep friendship, but we're familiar now." Zhou Hu laughed as he invited, "Mr. Luo, Do you want to come over to our place? Forget it. Send my regards to Crag Burst. Luo Nan wasn't good at this sort of social interaction. He was just about to leave when he turned his head to see Mo Peng's short and stout figure make his way in. Mo Peng was stunned for a moment when he saw Luo Nan chatting with a tall and sturdy man with a clear age gap. But he didn't really take it to heart. He greeted Luo Nan and went to release. Luo Nan found it inappropriate to leave first. He smiled at Zhou Hu, my older cousin. Zhou Hu understood and took his leave first. Mo Peng came to the sink just as Luo Nan left. He grimaced in pain. Did you just run into an acquaintance? Dad ran into one too. This place is evil. Another person walked in before Luo Nan could finish speaking. Luo Nan's back was facing the door right now. The person just happened to see Luo Nan's back as well as the side of his face reflected in the mirror. The person suddenly trembled and turned to leave. Chapter 96. As the voice fell, the person who had just entered hurriedly barged in again. He lowered his head and quickly entered the room. It looked like he really couldn't hold it in any longer. Mo Peng was baffled, but he also chuckled. Luo Nan could vaguely feel that this person's strange attitude was due to him. He swept a glance at the person's face and saw that this person was very young. He wore vintage gold-rimmed glasses. At first glance, he looked a bit like Octopus Bro. However, his hair was combed and shiny. His skin was tender and tender. He was a bit feminine. He looked familiar, but Luo Nan didn't recognize him for a moment. Luo Nan couldn't block this person at the urinal and interrogate him about this sort of thing. Luo Nan only kept his guard up as he walked out with Mo Peng. He casually picked up the topic from before. Where did this acquaintance come from? From work? He looks like a rich man? He brought a bodyguard and a lawyer. It looks like he's here to discuss business. He looks quite young. Mo Peng only remembered this much. The two strolled leisurely in the hallway. Then the sound of footsteps came from behind them. The young man who had gone to the wrong door just now walked in this direction after coming out of the restroom. However, he turned into a private room halfway. The distance was just right. Luo Nan released his mental senses to look at the situation inside. He sized up the faces of the people in the room when he heard a sentence. This place is evil. Whoever comes, that's who. Who? The one we just talked about. He nearly choked Li Xuecheng to death. He even joined the Order Club. F***ck me. That psychopath. Luo Nan couldn't help but touch his face. Luo Nan's advance had already exceeded the range of his senses after hearing this sentence. However, he didn't need to listen to the following words. He finally remembered that the glasses guy was one of Xie Juanping's bad friends. He seemed to be called Lu Tao. Luo Nan's initial understanding of the dark side of life form came from this person. There were 2 or 3 familiar faces among the people in the private room. He should have met them on the warship. They were probably a small circle of rich kids. Luo Nan just didn't expect that he would have a bit of fame in that circle. Even though it didn't sound good, Luo Nan no longer paid attention to this group of people. He and Mo Peng entered the hall together. The conversation within the private room continued to progress. It wouldn't be wrong to say that this was the circle of the rich second generation, but it would be more accurate to say that it was the majority of the members of the Construction Society's executive committee, except for Li Xuecheng, who was still lying in the hospital. Originally, they were going to have a meal with the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund, the co-investor, but the other party still hadn't arrived. The group of people hadn't had a meal for a long time, and they were all stifled. They could only rely on bragging and gossiping to survive. The relationship between this kid and Xie Juanping is unclear. I heard that the next morning, Li Xuecheng called Shattered Soul and his gang to beat him up. In the end, not only did they not succeed, they were even beaten up by Xie Juanping and sent to the hospital. This can't be right. Why did I hear that it's related to Lien Jieyu? Have you seen Xie Juanping hanging out with Lien Fu these past 2 days? It seems to have collapsed. At this moment, Lang Ding stood up from the main seat. I've just contacted him. He's outside. I'll go out and welcome him. Lu Taogang started a new topic. Although he was happy with it, he couldn't help but feel a little displeased. This person sure is arrogant. At this point, we don't even know his name or his appearance. I just need to know the Rainbow Fund's official seal and procedures. Lang Ding chuckled. He called a few people out and walked towards the main hall. Luo Nan and Mo Peng had already entered the main hall at this time. They could see from afar that the table they had reserved for 4 people at this time was actually full. There was even a person standing outside a small booth. Mo Peng rolled his eyes when he saw this. You haven't finished chatting yet. Don't tell me you want to eat at the same table? Luo Nan walked a bit closer. He wasn't obstructed by the antique wooden window, so he just happened to be able to see the appearance of the person outside the booth. His feet suddenly stopped. The person standing had a swift and fierce build. His skin was dark and shiny. His gaze swept all around with ice-cold vigilance. He had the appearance of a bodyguard. The dark-skinned bodyguard clearly sensed Luo Nan's gaze at the same time that Luo Nan's gaze swept over. His cold gaze was cast over. It was the dark-skinned man that Luo Nan had seen at Gear. The burner. Luo Nan's brows furrowed slightly. His footsteps paused for a bit. Then he sped up and walked straight over. He saw that aside from his aunt and uncle, there were 2 other people sitting. One was Lawyer Zhu, whom he had seen that day. The other was a man who looked to be around 30 years old. His face was handsome and he seemed to be smiling. But from the contours of his face, he should have maintained a serious appearance all year round. His smile appeared stiff, distorted, and a bit inexplicable coldness. But the thing that gave Luo Nan the deepest impression was the area around this person's eye sockets. The color of blood and tendons interweaved together to form a strange contrast with his current smile. Oh right, this person's eyes were a dark red color. Luo Nan got closer and further confirmed that the atmosphere in the booth was absolutely abnormal. His uncle's expression was tranquil. His aunt's expression was as deep as water. Neither of them said a word. There wasn't a hint of harmony between old friends. The red-eyed man didn't say a word either. Lawyer Zhu's elite tone came out from the booth. I am unable to explain too much for the time being regarding Mr. Yan's impromptu intention to transfer. However, from my professional perspective, there is a very high degree of maneuverability involved. Luo Nan and Mo Peng had already walked out of the booth at this time. The dark-faced bodyguard's gaze was fixed on Luo Nan's face from beginning to end. Luo Nan didn't do anything when faced with such a direct and cold gaze, but Mo Peng already found it a bit hard to endure. I say, there's something wrong with this atmosphere? The red-eyed man saw them return at this time and waved his hand, indicating for Lawyer Zhu to pause. His gaze turned and directly cut to Luo Nan's face. He paused for a moment and actually took the initiative to stand up, grinning. This was an even stranger smile. The center of his lips was quite wide open, but the corners of his lips were purposefully tightened, affecting the muscles of his cheeks. Not only did his eyes not narrow because of his smile, they actually widened a bit. The dark red region at the corner of his eyes slightly twitched. That bizarre distortion was indescribable. This must be Luo Nan. I remember the last time I saw you. You just came out of your mother's womb. You weren't even the size of a palm. You just rolled up and down like that. Yan Yongbua. Mrs. Luo Shuqing slammed the table with a bang. Her voice was unprecedentedly furious and shrill. The entire restaurant went silent. The customers in the surrounding area and even further away all turned their heads to look. The waiters hurried over, wanting to understand the situation. And this attracted the attention of Lang Ding and the others, who had just arrived at the hall and were looking all around. They didn't see anything else, but they first saw the dark-faced bodyguard who was like a door god. Hey, over there. A group of people walked over with curiosity. Lang Ding was the first to see the situation inside the booth. His gaze swept past Luo Nan and the others before finally stopping on the face of the red-eyed man. His expression changed in an instant and he cried out involuntarily, Teacher! Teacher Yan? Some of the members of the construction society who followed behind him were at a loss. Some were stupefied. But the ones who recognized the face before their eyes all thought to themselves, this sponsor. What a deep scheme. Chapter 97. I've been busy lately, so the update time is a bit messy. Please forgive me. No matter what, it had to be guaranteed that he would be able to eat twice a day. After this week, the rhythm would adjust. This chapter is the second update on the 17th. The vast majority of the Construction Society's executive committee members had stayed at Acumen College for over 10 years. 6 years ago, Yan Hong's academic scandal had shaken the entire world. There was no reason for them to forget it. What's more, wasn't the theme they were currently revolving around gear? In that academic scandal, the accident in Gear's underground laboratory was the scene that caused the world to be in an uproar. Yan Hong, facing the criticism of the entire world, deliberately created an accident, destroyed evidence, and used the crudest method to cover up his crimes. This also caused Acumen College, who was responsible for the administration, to lose face. After the incident, Yan Hong, who was condemned by everyone, disappeared without a trace. Yan Yonghua, who was a lecturer in the academy, also disappeared. Most people felt that they would never see them again. But reality slapped him hard in the face. It really is Yan Yonghua. He used to give me lessons. Lu Tao recognized Yan Yonghua and couldn't help but poke his companion beside him. Hey, he's the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund? That's a credit limit of tens of billions. And it seems that Quantum Corporation is behind it. Is Yan Hong coming back for revenge? His companion shook his head. He did not and could not answer this question. Yan Yonghua's demonic crimson eyes swept across the faces of Lang Ding and the others. He nodded slightly as a greeting. Then he turned his gaze to Luo Shuqing, who was glaring at him, and bowed. Miss Luo, I'm sorry. My words were inappropriate. Actually, I have always admired and respected senior sister Qingwen. Therefore, when I returned this time, the first thing I did was to purchase gear. This was senior Qingwen's undying work back then. Back then, I also hoped to restore the glory of my father's laboratory. Luo Shuqing didn't hide her emotions at all. In your dreams. Yan Yonghua calmly tapped his temple. Now, I have the ability to turn dreams into reality. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that you haven't eaten yet. I won't disturb you for now. We'll talk about the transfer later. He walked straight out of the cubicle, and Lawyer Zhu hurriedly got up to follow. Luo Nan stared coldly at this strange man outside the compartment. He didn't know who Yan Yonghua was at first, but now he was clear. It was this person. Yan Hong's son. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe him as a mortal enemy. No matter which side it was, they had no intention of resolving the enmity. Yan Yonghua walked to Luo Nan's side. Just as he was about to brush shoulders with Luo Nan, Yan Yonghua suddenly turned his head. He used a twisted smile to meet Luo Nan's clear and cold eyes. Speaking of which, my father and Mr. Luo Yuandao have worked together for many years. I was also Mr. Luo Yuandao's student and research assistant for a period of time. Senior Zhongheng, Senior Qingwen, and I are fellow alumni of Acumen College. If there is a chance to coexist, I hope to continue the fate of our two families at Gear. Luo Nan was disinclined to respond to such meaningless words. But in the next moment, Yan Yonghua suddenly turned around without any warning. He raised his hand and embraced Luo Nan's shoulder. It looked intimate, but Yan Yonghua bent his waist slightly. His unyielding strength forced Luo Nan to bend over. His mouth was right next to Luo Nan's ear as he laughed in a low voice. I was exaggerating a bit just now. You weren't that small when you were wrapped up in the womb. At worst, you were like a chihuahua rolling around in the solution. You were actually quite cute. Yan Yonghua felt Luo Nan's body go rigid in an instant. He patted Luo Nan's shoulder. It's just a pity for Senior Qingwen. I've been fantasizing about her since junior high. But from then on, I never did it again. Do you know why? Luo Nan turned his face slightly. His gaze was penetratingly cold and hard, but it was unable to affect Yan Yonghua's twisted smiling face in the slightest. It's too easy for me to make associations. When her face flashes in my mind, I think of that pile of rotting flesh and bones. In this instant, a certain string in Luo Nan's mind snapped. The heavily chained crow was about to pierce out of his body amidst the rattling vibrations, piercing through the head of the man before him. But a scorching firepower was transmitted from Yan Yonghua's body in advance. It penetrated through Luo Nan's neck, just like a red-hot blade. The instant brush with death caused Luo Nan's thoughts to stagnate. The heavily chained crow didn't come out, but Yan Yonghua's words pressed into his eardrums one word at a time. Look. This is the archetype format. This is the burner. This is the true result. And your kind is worthless. I didn't have the time to say those words to your dead old man back then. I'll give them to you. Yan Yonghua let go of Luo Nan's shoulder and laughed loudly just like that. He directly left, and the dark-faced bodyguard followed closely behind. Lawyer Zhu also hurriedly followed. Lang Ding and the other members of the construction society looked at each other in dismay. They hesitated for a while, but they still chased after Yan Yonghua. Yan Yonghua seemed to have gone mad. He laughed all the time. His laughter was hoarse and sharp, echoing throughout the entire dining hall. Nan Nan. Luo Shuqing, who had just been intimidated by the inexplicable power, finally broke free. She flipped over the chair and threw herself over. She hugged Luo Nan, who was still in a bent posture, and spoke incoherently. Are you okay? What did he say? That bastard. Are you okay? What did he say? Luo Nan didn't say anything. Up ahead, Yan Yonghua walked very quickly, pulling open the distance between him and the group of people from the construction society. Finally, his laughter stopped, and his face quickly returned to its usual cold and solemn state. Lawyer Zhu. Lawyer Zhu had to jog the entire way in order to keep up. It was inevitable that his elite style of calmness was a bit scattered. But he had no choice but to run. He had been scared stiff by Yan Yonghua's previous performance. He had never thought that this big financial backer of his, who had always maintained a calm appearance, would actually have such a crazed core. He gasped for breath and asked, Mr. Yan, do you have any instructions? How is the school? The sudden change in topic and situation caused Lawyer Zhu to stare blankly. Luckily, this was his field of expertise, so he quickly replied, they basically agree to speed up the process. If the bidding goes smoothly. Why doesn't it go smoothly? Ha! Under the unreserved support of the Rainbow Fund. Come. Lawyer Zhu. Tell me where it doesn't go smoothly? Lawyer Zhu felt his legs go a bit soft. He unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva and rushed to remedy the situation. After the bidding succeeds, the relevant procedures will be completed within half a month. Are there any other obstructions? Right now he's mainly in the society. That one just now. I'm talking about Luo Nan. Lawyer Zhu glanced at Yan Yonghua's face from the corner of his eyes as he spoke. Seeing that Yan Yonghua didn't have any special reaction, Lawyer Zhu continued to speak. Luo Nan is a member of the society. He doesn't have the right to make decisions, but he does have the right to request for reconsideration. In other words, he can go through questioning a certain part of the procedure to drag things out for a period of time. Of course, this doesn't affect the overall situation. We can advance forward together. Yan Yonghua suddenly turned around and grabbed his collar in a rude manner. He stared at him and said, Lawyer Zhu, do you know what the big picture is? Lawyer Zhu was scared silly and shook his head vigorously. Do you know how many earthquakes have occurred in Xia City over the past 10 days? He continued to shake his head. It's been 15 times. If you don't even know this, how can you talk about the big picture? Lawyer Zhu had already been thoroughly confused by Yan Yonghua's logic. Fortunately, Yan Yonghua released his grip and sighed. Sorry, I'm a little excited. Help me think, what should I do now? Right now, my mind is filled with kill, kill, kill. Isn't this not too good? Chapter 98. I came back too late today. The second chapter will be finished in the wee hours of the morning. I might as well put it on tomorrow morning. Everyone doesn't have to stay up to wait. It's equivalent to tomorrow's third chapter. Also, there was an error in the chapter numbering. It has been corrected. Because of their pause, Lang Ding and the others also caught up. Yan Yonghua didn't pay them any attention, only using a very serious expression to stare at Lawyer Zhu, hoping to get an answer. Lawyer Zhu's legs were really weak. His heart was already bursting with regret and fear. Now, he was more certain than ever that Yan Yonghua wasn't a normal person from the very core. Yan Yonghua wasn't normal, but Lawyer Zhu believed himself to be very normal. How could he possibly speak of this kind of kill, kill, kill matter in front of others? He just wanted to block Yan Yonghua's mouth and stop him from spitting out those murderous words. For this, he desperately squeezed his brain tissue and tried hard to form words. Mr. Yan, perhaps we can use another method. If we want to circumvent his right to review, The best way is to terminate his membership in the club. Yes, I know this is impossible, but there is an alternative. Yes, there is another way. Under pressure, people's potential was indeed limitless. Lawyer Zhu's brain really did jump out with a brand new train of thought. Yes, we can make him withdraw. We just need to prove that Luo Nan has some kind of direct interest relationship with this auction. Then we just need to hold a hearing and I can shut him up forever. At this time, Lang Ding and the others had already formed a circle, blocking most of the corridor. He wanted to greet him, but Yan Yonghua didn't even bother to look him in the eye. Instead, he was quite interested in Lawyer Zhu's words. Benefits? For example, we can question whether or not Luo Nan had a secret agreement with the Mystic Arts Research Society beforehand. After all, the timing of his entry into the society is too coincidental. We can completely make an issue out of this. Yan Yonghua nodded slightly. Very good, but how do we prove it? No, Mr. Yan. I'm just making an analogy. Lawyer Zhu finally regained his confidence in his professional field. His voice became a bit louder. We can completely adopt a more proactive method. In fact, I think that the transfer intention that you mentioned just now is a very good entry point. I don't really understand the situation inside. It seems to be related to some patents. Yan Yonghua's expression did not change. He nodded slightly. More or less. Luo Nan is the direct descendant of the victim? The legal heir? That's right, that's his grandfather. Then, if you don't mind, you can use your private identity to fight a lawsuit with them. As long as the court accepts it, a beneficial relationship will appear between you and Luo Nan. And as the person in charge of the Rainbow Fund, you are a key figure in this bidding. Then, all of Luo Nan's questioning of Gear's bidding process can be viewed as selfish actions. I think that with this reason, the school will make a very sensible decision. No matter how much he objects, it will be useless. Hearing this, Yan Yonghua stroked his chin lightly. Is that so? Filled with anger, yet powerless to do anything. This is good. Does this count as a pass? Lawyer Zhu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Lang Ding and the others finally got the chance to say hello. They were actually very embarrassed. He inexplicably listened to a string of schemes aimed at Luo Nan, but the other side really didn't try to avoid it at all. After all, this was a public place. Many people in the restaurant were looking over because of the previous incident. There were also people going in and out of the private rooms along the corridor, casting curious glances at them. Not too far away, there was a big guy who was nearly 2 meters tall. His face was flushed from being drunk. He leaned against the wall and looked over in a daze. He probably guessed that with his size, he would bump into him if he walked over. But Yan Yonghua really didn't care. He was very calm right now. I'm very sorry for what happened just now. It involved some personal grudges. I lost my composure a bit and made everyone laugh. Right now, not even a hint of craziness could be seen from Yan Yonghua's body. But the more he was like this, the more people felt that he was strange and unfathomable. In the end, it was Lang Ding who suggested, let's go inside and talk. We need to drink a few cups in a bit to welcome Teacher Yan. No matter what they thought in their hearts, everyone nodded in agreement. The group of people immediately surrounded Yan Yonghua and entered the private room. The atmosphere seemed to be quite enthusiastic. In comparison, Luo Nan's family, who were still in the lobby, were in a more difficult time. This was because of what had happened before and Luo Shuqing's nearly uncontrollable emotions. Many people raised their eyebrows. The lobby manager also came over to ask if they needed any help. He probably felt that Luo Nan's family was in a weak position in the conflict just now. Luo Shuqing was just about to call the police, but her husband stopped her. She suppressed her uncontrollable emotions with great difficulty. Luo Shuqing felt that she shouldn't say anything right now. She should immediately go home. No, she should go to the hospital. Luo Nan's current state was far too worrying. His head was lowered from beginning to end, not saying a single word. Based on Luo Shuqing's understanding of children, she felt that Luo Nan's entire being was in an extremely gloomy state. His emotions were suppressed, and it seemed that he would explode at any moment. What she was most worried about was, would this sort of stimulation affect Luo Nan's mind? Right when Luo Shuqing was fidgeting restlessly, Luo Nan opened his mouth and said, I'm hungry. Then he picked up his chopsticks and began to eat the food that had been placed on the dining table. This wasn't a very polite action, but it more or less displayed a rational attitude. Luo Xuqing and Mo Haiheng glanced at each other. They didn't have any intentions of defying Luo Nan. They ate silently as well. No one was able to taste the food. Even the most ignorant Mo Peng didn't have the mood to play games. He looked at this and looked at that, his fat face wrinkling. The dinner ended hastily, and the family took a car home. Luo Xuqing's emotions, which she had been suppressing in public, completely erupted in the car within the privacy of her own home. Despicable and shameless mad dogs. They've been restrained in Quantum Corporation for 5 years, and this father and son are biting anyone they see. This was the first time in Mo Peng's life that he had seen his mother use profanity. He was truly stupefied as he watched. Luo Xuqing wanted to say more, but Mo Haiheng spoke in a low voice. "He's asleep." Luo Xuqing was slightly stunned. She leaned forward slightly and looked at the front passenger seat. Luo Nan was leaning against the back of the seat, sleeping. She suppressed all the words she had in her stomach. Luo Nan's reaction was abnormal no matter how she looked at it. The husband and wife looked at each other once more. They could see the worry in each other's eyes. Luo Nan could only apologize to his aunt and uncle for their worry. He actually hadn't slept. He just wanted to be quiet for a moment and organize his thoughts. But right now the emotions in his heart were churning. How could he calm down? He had been disturbed time and time again, so he could only shift his consciousness elsewhere. The second-level interface of the drawing software opened up on his retina through the external neuron. The interface here clearly had a subtle corresponding relationship with his mental plane. The turbid river water surged with waves, forming a whirlpool of its own. It was as if the whirlpool was a clear indication of his fluctuating emotions. Thousands of playing cards floated along with the whirlpool, forming a chaotic mess. Only the 3 believers in the format pyramid remained relatively stable. Luo Nan's gaze cut past Xie Junping and Cat Eyes. It didn't stop there. In the end, it fell upon the wraith sign on the technician level. Chapter 99. The red light signified that the wraith sign was devouring. In reality, it was devouring Luo Nan's restless and violent fury. The wraith sign was born from devouring the negative emotions of the human heart. It was restricted by the heavily chained crow here, so it was impossible for it to harm Luo Nan's vital energy. But when such intense emotions squeezed in, it was tantamount to releasing a layer of restriction. As the red light gradually flourished, the wraith sign sprayed out thousands of lines. It was similar to Luo Nan's sketches, but it was 10 times faster. In an instant, a complex and malevolent structure was constructed. 6 eyes lined up, each with a different color. 8 claws extended to the side, merging with the human body. Such a demonic and ugly image was the human-faced arachnid. When this image was completed, Luo Nan's restlessness on the mental plane had already reached the point where it was ready to gush out. Within the format pyramid, the human-faced arachnid prepared to pounce, and Luo Nan's mind leaped. In an instant, the world changed. Luo Nan's consciousness suddenly separated from the car. His mental senses broke free from the shackles and expanded to the limit in all directions. Luo Nan's soul left his body at this moment. The SUV carrying his main body drove off into the distance. Only his soul remained here, occupying an empty plane. Luo Nan didn't feel lonely at all. This was because the range of his mental senses instantly increased explosively by 100 times, 1,000 times. The splendidly lit metropolis, the crisscrossing and speeding stream of cars, the entangled and restless living beings. An inconceivable scene was formed in this moment, smashing into Luo Nan's mind. Roar! Luo Nan cast off all his worries, restraints, and burdens. He ignored the inherent logic of the bustling metropolis and the multitude of living beings. He only responded to the most direct and violent emotions in his heart. He faced the sky and roared. The heavily chained crow rattled and trembled on his soul body, swimming endlessly. And at the front of the chain, the malevolent and ugly human-faced arachnid felt Luo Nan's violent emotions. It faced the sky and roared in response. The two forces interweaved together, forming a surging psychic wave that rapidly spread in all directions. The majestic metropolis seemed to be slightly stifled at this moment. Then it returned to its established routine, as if it wasn't affected at all. On the contrary, The hundreds of crows that had already entered their nests flew up in fright. They attracted the attention of the nearby residents and passers-by, bringing a bit of restless emotions. This kind of intelligent bird seemed to have a spiritual sense that was difficult for ordinary people to reach. It felt the impact of the restlessness in the air and found it difficult to stay in its nest. Luonan calmed down after venting out his soul howl. At the very least, he could still think logically. In the soul state, without the stimulation of various hormones, the influence of emotions was reduced. He could ignore Yan Yongguo's deep malice, and he could grit his teeth and forget the mockery and humiliation that pierced his bottom line. He could only grab the last bit of valuable information from the turbid currents that blocked his rationality. He saw me as a fetus. When the wilderness laboratory was in turmoil, he was there, and he was still on our side. But at that time, it was only 2 years after Yan Hong's report and shameless plagiarism. The continuous stripping of veins brought Luo Nan a bit closer to the truth of the past. Luo Yuandao's research in the wilderness could be divided into 3 stages. After the Third World War until the mid-60s, he traveled all over the world without a fixed residence. Then came the most stable scientific research period, which lasted until the end of the 1970s. In the past 15 years, it was also the most fruitful period. Starting from the year 79, his grandfather had mental problems, and the laboratory was in turmoil. Bo Qingwen died, and the entire research work came to a halt. The entire family returned to the city. Based on Yan Yongguo's approximate age, it was very likely that he joined at the end of the scientific research period or before the period of turmoil. This was a very delicate point. He should have been preparing back then. Then Yan Yongguo must be someone in the know. Perhaps he was a participant. He must be. Yan Hong's whereabouts were unknown, but his son had come out. Could his father be far away? Luo Nan's soul was submerged in the lights of the city, but there was an indescribable throbbing emotion in his heart that gradually became clear. So I still have a chance for revenge? The aerial struggle for honor was destined to be a dull and tedious path. But Luo Nan had no other choice before tonight. But now the situation was different. Luo Nan suddenly laughed in spite of himself. This was a pure joy of the mind, but it also had a subtle connection with his main body. Though his main body had gone far away with the SUV, and the distance was already over 10 kilometers, there was always a thread of spiritual response that remained. As long as this response continued, he would not reach his limits. He would even be able to realize some small interactions. This information did not come out of thin air. Luo Nan looked at the human-faced arachnid that was controlled by the chains. This vicious and ugly dark-side life form maintained its usual obedience, but there was an unending stream of energy that carried some information that was transmitted over. This information was combined with Luo Nan's own experiences, allowing Luo Nan to come to a new conclusion. Luo Nan gradually understood in his mind that it was originally impossible for him to achieve the out-of-body state at his current level. Forcefully doing it would probably result in his soul flying away and scattering. He was only able to maintain it due to the assistance of the human-faced arachnid and the blood transfusion. But in the end, it was the heavily chained crow of the self-format that subdued this dark-sider life form. Only then was he able to realize this marvelous arrangement. This form was just like in the legends. They used the power of evil to summon and enslave demons and ghosts. This caused Luo Nan to have an epiphany in his mind. The self-format manifested itself as control. It was very stupid to use one's own strength to fight. The most correct choice was to unearth the abilities and power of the human-faced arachnid, a summoned creature. Unfortunately, he only had one summoned creature right now. It was the human-faced arachnid avatar formed from the Wraith sign. Its abilities were powerful, but it was hard to display it in the open. But right now, he could only make do with it. Luo Nan's mind stabilized. His soul body floated down onto the back of the human-faced arachnid. The lich beneath him leaped up noiselessly. It locked onto a direction and directly leaped into the void. A distance of over 100 meters was traversed in a single flash. This was much more powerful than when he was on the warship. Luo Nan's mind was a bit at ease. He was just about to use his heart to experience this feeling. But his heart stirred slightly. Then he saw a black shadow flapping its wings. It swept past at a low altitude and let out a coarse caw from its mouth. It was a crow. It had a very large head. And when it reached a certain position behind him, it no longer moved forward. Instead, It flew in circles, feeling a bit lost. Ink. Luo Nan's mental senses covered over and he finally confirmed. Wasn't this the pet crow he used to practice hypnosis? Luo Nan carefully sized up the surrounding area. Sure enough, it was a bit familiar. It turned out that their family had passed through the River Wu district on their way back to the city. And this place wasn't too far from Blue Bay community. Chapter 100. It was said that the intelligence of crows surpassed that of a 7-year-old child. He didn't know if it was because of Ink's innate talent or the effect of hypnosis, but Ink's intelligence was clearly higher than others of its kind, and its intuition was also better. It circled a few times, but it was unable to see the silhouette of Luo Nan. It folded its wings and landed on a protruding area of the outer wall of a skyscraper. It looked all around, and it scratched and hissed. It was clearly using its usual method to arouse Luo Nan's attention. Right now, Luo Nan's soul body was no more than 700 meters away. His heart stirred slightly when he saw Ink act like this. The heavily chained crow clattered as psychic waves converged and shot toward Ink. This was originally just Luo Nan's attempt, but Ink clearly quivered in his senses. The feathers on its body stood up, and it immediately turned its head. It was impossible to see anything in the dark night, but after a moment of hesitation, it still flapped its wings and flew toward the location of Luo Nan's soul body. It began to fly and glide around after arriving in this area. It seemed as if it could really sense Luo Nan's existence. Good boy. Luo Nan felt a bit gratified. He tried using this brand new method to communicate with Ink. The results were indeed much better than simple hypnosis. The feedback he received from Ink was even more direct and clear. There was a great feeling of telepathy. The human-faced arachnid's 6 heterochromatic eyes adjusted their angles. It seemed to be paying attention to this new comrade. Of course, the human-faced arachnid's avatar didn't possess any self-awareness. This was just a two-way connection that originated from Luo Nan. Luo Nan felt that he was like a wizard of the ancient era. The heavily chained crow was his artifact. It was like a giant python coiled around his soul body. The human-faced arachnid was a demon that he summoned. The crow was a spirit bird that he tamed. His power was displayed through this method. Time was of the essence. Luo Nan could not waste too much time because of Ink. Right when he was about to have Ink return, a subtle stimulus was transmitted back to him from his main body. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment, but he soon discerned that the stimulus came from the hexa ear. This miniature instrument manifested an inconceivable effect. After it detected that Luo Nan's main body was lacking in consciousness, it actually captured the subtle sensation of his out-of-body soul. It transformed the information into an even purer psychic wave. Through the sensing frequency, it traversed several dozen kilometers and accurately entered Luo Nan's mental plane. The message was a conversation request, and it was accompanied by a notification from the psychic wave network. Do you want to turn on the remote sensing function? If he refused to activate it, the conversation would automatically be skipped. It was equivalent to the owner being in a deep sleep state. What an incredible invention! Luo Nan couldn't help but pay his respects to the legendary President Ouyang. Without a doubt, the inventor must have fully considered the situation of the out-of-body experience to design such a function. Just from this point of view, what Octopus had described in the afternoon regarding President Ouyang's superb attainments in the field of mental enhancement was very reasonable. Luo Nan pondered for a moment, then chose to open the call. This was because he saw that the one who requested the call was actually Crag Burst. Crag Burst and Luo Nan were both members of the Wilderness Explorers Society. Crag Burst had been at the same restaurant as Luo Nan, but the two had never met face to face. Luo Nan reckoned that Crag Burst probably wanted to pull him together for a get-together or something like that. Luo Nan didn't have such thoughts right now, but he wanted to confirm the situation over at the restaurant with Crag Burst. As the remote sensing function was activated, the information from both sides collided in the night sky through the guidance of psychic waves. Luo Nan, who was in his soul body state, was inexplicably a bit absent-minded. This was a completely different experience compared to his normal state of communication. Crag Burst's thick voice rang out in the instant Luo Nan's mind wandered. It looked like he was someone who habitually used the hexa ear as a phone. Mr. Luo, you left? Luo Nan was baffled as to why Crag Burst was so sure. Could it be that Crag Burst ran to the hall to find him? He paused for a moment before replying with a lie that wasn't a lie. Yeah, I'm with my family. Cragburst let out a laugh. You really left just like that? You're so boring. You're not even going to get your face back? It's a shame that I drank less alcohol to come find you. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. Sure enough, good things don't go out, but bad things travel 1,000 miles. If things continued at this pace, his embarrassing appearance in the restaurant would soon spread throughout the society. Cragburst was a wonderful person. His thinking was very straightforward. He probably felt that Luo Nan had lost face and wanted to get it back. It looked like he was very happy to participate. Unfortunately, Luo Nan's current state made it hard for him to directly borrow Cragburst's strength. Wait a minute. Luo Nan stared at Ink, who was leisurely circling in the air. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Is your party over? I'm not drinking anymore. Of course we're disbanding. Ha! What do you want? Cragburst clearly wanted the world to be in chaos. In the past, Luo Nan would have had a headache dealing with this sort of person. But right now, this was exactly what he wanted. I still need some time before I can get there. Have they left yet? It seems they're progressing quite quickly. If you're a bit late, then you won't have any hope. Holy crap. They're out. Even a working meal isn't this fast. Did the negotiations between the Rainbow Fund and the Construction Society go smoothly, or did they part on bad terms? Luo Nan was disinclined to think about it. He looked at Ink once more and spoke to Cragburst. Help me keep an eye on them. Share your location and keep in contact. I'll hurry over and meet up with you. Stalking them, right? That's not a problem. But are you sure you can make it over in time? You don't need me to help you intercept them or something? Not for now. Okay then. Let me know if you need me. My Tiger Burst hasn't made a profit since I bought it. Thanks a lot. Luo Nan didn't say anything more to this big guy who insisted on joining in on the fun. He hung up and gazed at Ink in the sky once more. Ink seemed to feel Luo Nan's gaze as it let out 2 rough squawks. Its plume feathers trembled and it glided more and more cheerfully within the multicolored haze of light. The heavily chained crow's swimming speed above Luo Nan's soul body increased. The human-faced arachnid beneath Luo Nan also felt this change. It raised its bewitching and ugly head and its 6 eyes flickered. It let out a hiss that only existed on the mental plane. Xia City didn't have a true night. All sorts of neon lights built a mottled sky that belonged exclusively to this moment. It was mixed with the rhythm of a carnival that existed everywhere. It seeped into the hearts of every single person who was still wandering outside. Cragburst opened the car window and let the manic heavy metal music spray wantonly. It was accompanied by surging musical phrases as he roared loudly. He completely ignored the gazes cast by the stream of cars outside. Smash your chest open and embrace the gentleness of blood. Probably no one would think that this fellow was doing stalking work. Cragburst didn't have this sort of self-awareness. From his perspective, as long as he ensured that the target car in front of him didn't leave his field of vision, then everything would be fine. Tear my throat apart. Kiss. Holy crap. A crow that could be described as brave and fierce flitted across the hood of his car. It scraped the front window and leaped over the roof of his car. It was admittedly thrilling and exciting, but it completely disrupted the rhythm of his music. For this reason, he extended his hand out the window and pointed his middle finger to the sky. Hurry up and smash your head to death. Experience my wrath. At this time, the Hexa ear transmitted a message. It was Luo Nan. Keep up the speed. I'm coming. Chapter 101. Cragburst stared blankly as a sturdy crow charged in from outside the car window. The crow bumped into the thick leather of the seat, then fell down and landed on the back seat. The 2 feathers that had fallen were blown out of the window by the strong wind that was blowing in and out of the carriage. But in the end, this uninvited guest stayed. Mr. Luo? Yes, it's me. The crow straightened its body and cawed twice. The sound was coarse and unpleasant to the ears, but it surprisingly matched the heavy metal roaring in the car. Of course, the real way to respond was through the Hexa ear. Cragburst never would have thought that the so-called "I'm coming" would be this kind of situation. For a moment, he forgot that the crow's sharp claws had already scratched the surface of the genuine leather seat. He widened his eyes and looked up and down several times. Spiritually enhanced people have so many tricks up their sleeves. What is this, a summoner? You share senses with this bird? Yes, that's about it. Since Cragburst had spoken like this, Luonan took advantage of the situation to admit it. This was to avoid looking for other reasons that would make his story full of flaws. Yo, looks like a lot of people have underestimated you. To be able to attach oneself to a flexible object and share one's senses is a brilliant move of the soul sense division. Without the corresponding talent, even an awakened would find it hard to do it beautifully. It's just too wretched. Cragburst curled his lips. He was a muscle-oriented person, so he wasn't too fond of cloning and incarnation techniques. However, the other party hadn't awakened yet, and he was a toothpick guy who was seriously biased towards other subjects. It was already quite good that he could use such a method. In particular, his attitude of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, and never letting a grudge rest overnight, was even more praiseworthy. At this moment, Ink jumped twice on the leather seat and spread its wings to fly again. The Tigerburst was a military-modified off-road vehicle. The interior of the vehicle was extremely spacious. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to fit a big fellow like Cragburst. However, it was still a little difficult for Ink, which had a body length of nearly 70 centimeters and a wingspan of nearly 1 meter, to flap its wings. After flapping twice, it couldn't exert any strength. Cragburst laughed out loud as he watched. He directly extended his hand, grabbed Ink, and placed it on the control panel. Here, the view is the best. Did you see that? There are 2 cars in front. The blue MPV. Ink's sharp toes gripped the edge of the dashboard, and it stood very steadily. Its black eyes stared at the target car in front of it with great concentration. What do you think? Do you want to do it? Cragburst had always wanted to play big. No. I don't need it for now. Luonan responded simply. Cragburst was a bit disappointed. It wasn't a good time to roar his songs right now. On the contrary, he was bored, so he casually chatted. I originally thought you were going to ask Vice Chairman He for help. You even wanted to pull Zhou Hu along when you left. You actually didn't contact him? Why Sister He? Luonan was a bit speechless. Could it be that he gave people the feeling that he was the type to go find his parents after getting beaten up? Well, He Yueyin wasn't his parent either. On the contrary, this woman, who came from the military, had a typical business-like personality. Using her own personal matters to ask for help would only make people look down on her. This is my personal matter. I shouldn't let others handle it. Brother Cragburst. Many thanks for helping to keep watch for so long. Leave the rest to me. What? You're going to kick me just like that? Cragburst wasn't happy. It looks like you're not going to make a move tonight? Yeah. It involves a complicated case from over 10 years ago. I want to understand it in depth. It's mainly to investigate. Cragburst still didn't give up. Are you sure? You're a bird, and it took a lot of effort to fly over here. Can you keep up? The flying speed of a bald crow was considered normal among birds. Even though Ink had been nurtured by Luonan and its body had grown, its speed was only around 70 kilometers per hour. It really wasn't possible to keep up with Ink in a situation where the traffic was smooth and there wasn't any congestion. The problem was that Luonan never expected Ink to be able to do it. He had Ink come over and appear in front of Cragburst just to find a reason to cover up. True reconnaissance still needed to rely on something else. Luonan's soul body was floating in the air above the traffic layer while he was chatting with Cragburst. He avoided close contact with an awakened like Cragburst and advanced in sync with the flow of traffic. The range of his senses exceeded 500 meters. The target's blue van was already covered within. 2 rounds of penetrating scanning had already been carried out. However, this low-key blue van's outer shell material seemed to be quite extraordinary. A certain amount of interference would appear every time the vehicle was scanned. It made it very hard to determine the number of people inside and the location. Luonan's heart grew vigilant after 2 unsuccessful attempts. Everything went quite smoothly before, but it seemed that his reconnaissance was a bit too direct. And at this moment, the alarm device within the van was triggered. There was no sound, but a glaring red light shone. The dark-skinned bodyguard in the driver's seat had a penetrating gaze. His gaze swept outside the window. Darksider life form? Yen Yonghua, who had been resting with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes. But the alarm light suddenly extinguished at this time. Yan Yongbua couldn't help muttering. Could it be that we've passed through the domain of a human-faced arachnid? Or is there an out-of-body mental traversing expert paying attention to us? We've been tailed. The dark-skinned bodyguard suddenly spoke. The projector turned on at this time, displaying a real-time satellite image of the surrounding area. The car's AI combined this image with the automatic recording content of the van. It quickly analyzed and marked out a few suspicious targets. The targets with the highest probability were circled in an eye-catching red frame. It was an eye-catching and domineering military-modified Tiger Burst SUV. Its volume was like that of a small armored vehicle. It had a rough four-wheeled structure that could truly gallop through the wilderness. It seemed out of place in the bustling metropolis. This car has been following us ever since we left the restaurant. And the monitoring system shows that the words blue van were mentioned. The military? This sort of arrogant tailing method really did seem like the method of some arrogant soldier or valiant general. However, when Yan Yongbua squinted his eyes to look carefully, he was able to capture a sturdy crow beneath the car's window through the high-resolution image. Clearly, this wasn't some sort of decoration. Interesting. Investigate the details. Oh, hold on. We're in the River Wu district right now? Yes. Then let's use a different method. Yan Yongbua slowly rubbed his fingers. Then he pulled outwards lightly. Inexplicably, a fine soft needle was pulled out from the skin and flesh of his fingertip. The scene was bizarre beyond compare. The soft needle was as thick as a strand of hair. It was only around 5 centimeters long. One could see that it was made of metal. But in Yan Yongbua's hands, it looked like it was made of flour. He rubbed the soft needle twice in his hand. When he opened his hand again, the soft needle magically transformed into a metal beetle the size of a grain of rice. Yan Yongbua opened the window and flicked the beetle out of the car with a flick of his finger. Tell Jack that it's time to upgrade the hardware. If he wants to obtain the top-notch configuration, then he needs to work harder. Look in the junk of that car. Chapter 102. Let's continue. I'll be your driver for free today. You can treat me later, or you can tell my fortune or something. Can psychics tell fortunes? Telling the location of an enemy. Asking for the location of a goddess. This is also changing fate. Why isn't it called fortune-telling? Cragburst grinned in laughter. He looked down the car window and saw Ink's earnest appearance. He couldn't help but reach out to pinch Ink's neck. Hey, do you feel like you're being petted on the head? Luo Nan wouldn't tell him that Ink was just a cover to coax him. He simply replied, "Stop messing around." Ha! Luo Nan's all-encompassing mental senses were inexplicably touched. The window of the blue MPV in front had clearly opened up a crack. It was as if something was ejecting out. It was extremely small and its speed was very fast. It collided with the car behind it in practically an instant. Then the senses were interrupted. The Tiger Burst Jeep and the blue MPV were separated by 2 cars. The senses were interrupted twice. When they reappeared, they were already on the hood of the Tiger Burst Jeep. Luo Nan's mental senses always had a resolution problem. This time was no exception. He could only faintly sense that it was a tiny beetle-like object. It seemed to have pierced through the 2 cars in the middle before pouncing onto the Tiger Burst Jeep. Then he completely lost his senses. At this time, all 4 windows of the Jeep rose up, forming a sealed space. Without the whistling of the wind outside, the rumbling of heavy metal was much more ear-piercing. Cragburst was a bit startled. He snapped his fingers. "Open the window." The voice control command was given, but the car's AI didn't respond at all. Not only that, but the car even began to slow down and turn. Luo Nan's warning cut in. "Careful, there's something. F***ck me. I've been bewitched." Cragburst cursed at practically the same time, but he soon calmed down. In the next few seconds, he tried using hand control, voice control, and other methods, but it was useless. The windows couldn't be opened, the speed couldn't be changed, and even the stereo couldn't be adjusted. The car's AI firmly controlled the Tiger Burst Jeep. It turned into a downward trajectory, circling around the skyscraper, and spiraled down. "Is it a virus?" Cragburst judged. "No, It's more like a mechanical bug. Luo Nan spoke of his observations. In any case, someone is controlling it from a distance. Cragburst came up with the most reasonable explanation. We've been discovered. Aside from Cragburst and Luo Nan, no one could see that the AI in this arrogant and domineering military-modified Tigerburst had already gone out of control. The jeep moved steadily along with the rolling traffic, but it was getting further and further away from its target. At this moment, Cragburst and Ink were imprisoned in this sealed space. They didn't know where they would be taken. Cragburst stopped all of his attempts to seize back control. He swept his eyes over the constantly changing environment outside the car. His eyes unexpectedly flickered with an exceptionally excited light, and the corners of his mouth perked up once more. He turned his head to Mo Hui. You must have been discovered, but they are targeting this car. You can continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he heavily elbowed the car window beside him. The tough bulletproof glass instantly exploded into fine cracks like a spider web. If intelligence wasn't enough, violence would make up the difference. Cragburst's eyes didn't even blink when he treated his beloved car in such a manner. He extended his hand and tore down the glass window that was already on the verge of collapse. He casually tossed it into the back seat. His other hand suddenly grabbed Ink. He didn't care how the bird struggled, and he simply tossed it out the window. Go! Don't let me down! Ink was forcefully tossed several dozen meters away, just in time to avoid the downward trajectory of light. It spread its wings just in time to avoid the tragedy of smashing into the glass curtain wall of the building. Luo Nan shouted through the Hexa ear. What the hell are you doing? I want to know what they're doing. Cragburst laughed boldly. His bored attitude from before was completely swept away. You go keep an eye on them first. Keep in touch. I want to see where they can take me. He extended his hand out from the broken window and waved. Then a hoarse and berserk roar rang out. Smash your chest open. Embrace the gentleness of blood. Oh! Ink spiraled within the neon-glowing mist. Luo Nan's soul body hovered motionlessly in the center of Ink's spiraling and fluttering axis. 2 seconds ago, the blue jeep carrying Yen Yonghua had left the range of his senses. Actually, if he really wanted to give chase, he could easily catch up to them with the speed of his soul body flying through space. However, so what if he caught up? The anti-reconnaissance equipment on the jeep raised Luo Nan's vigilance greatly. If he continued to forcefully chase after them, not only would he alert the enemy, but he would also expose his identity and abilities. Luo Nan's thoughts spun rapidly, and he made a decision in the blink of an eye. Cragburst was clearly worth paying more attention to. Yen Yonghua had taken the initiative to help. Right now, the jeep had gone out of control and Luo Nan was in danger. Luo Nan would feel uneasy if he didn't help. Also, Luo Nan was quite concerned about that mechanical bug. Luo Nan's soul body suddenly descended, carrying Ink as it chased behind the Tigerburst jeep. The Tigerburst jeep maintained a stable speed, and its direction was the same from start to finish. The jeep continued to descend after changing tracks twice to switch traffic layers. The tyrannical body of the jeep continuously ran parallel to several low-altitude public transport vehicles. They intersected and plunged head-first into the suddenly dimmed layer. The jeep passed through the dividing line between light and darkness. The clamor of the metropolis was suddenly separated by a layer in everyone's senses. Even the heavy metal vibrating within the jeep seemed to be rendered with a layer of irritation. The jeep's headlights cut through the outer walls of the surrounding buildings. The damaged outer walls, the messy graffiti, and some suspicious black and red colors converged together. The recycling layer. Due to the phototaxis of living things, people would always yearn for areas with fresh air and sunlight. This was especially true in the bustling area of the city center. The skyscrapers were dense, and the low-altitude transportation network extended in all directions. The residents of the city would go up and down. Sometimes, they wouldn't truly set foot on the ground for several years. A low-altitude public transport 30 meters above the ground was already the limit for most people to descend. This was how the high-altitude race got their name. The problem was that Xia City was an enormous city with a population of 200 million. It never had the qualifications to waste space. It was inevitable that there would be some people within the population of 200 million who had to survive in the dark and damp space of the lower levels. Without a doubt, this was the slum of the modern city. It was the recycling layer that specialized in disposing of the city's trash. To a certain degree, it was also a place where gangs gathered outside the law. The Tiger Burst Jeep roared as it charged down from the upper levels. It practically instantly attracted the gazes of a large number of professionals in this gloomy space. A sharp whistling sound rang out. Between the buildings, within the ever-narrowing alleys, high-powered modified motorcycles started up one after another. They sped along at high speed. People of all shapes and sizes on the motorcycles brandished malevolent spiked clubs, chains, and of course, firearms. They howled and cursed at the jeep that was still advancing along the light rail in midair. At the same time, they were also looking forward to it. Chapter 103. The light rail ahead has been destroyed. Automatically switching to off-road mode. The car's AI automatically issued an order. Several seconds later, the enormous Tiger Burst Jeep slid down from the final port. Its four wheels landed on the ground, and it rolled over the primitive and shabby asphalt road as it continued forward. 20 to 30 people had already gathered together. They were the nearby gangs and motorcycle gang members. They cheered in unison. There were even more daring people who sped up and used their spikes to push against the side of the Jeep. They sped up, leaving behind clear and distorted scratches on the Jeep's body. And when they passed by the car window, they made a humiliating gesture towards Cragburst. "You pig flaunting your wealth. I'm going to poke your ass until it explodes." Cragburst cracked a smile and returned the same gesture. "Come. I'm afraid you're not tough enough." The curses outside grew even louder, but Cragburst didn't care in the slightest. He looked all around him, comparing the surroundings to his memories from his early years. If he remembered correctly, the road the Jeep was driving on had nearly 30 years of history. It was originally designed to be some sort of main road in the city. Moreover, it was connected to some transportation route in the wilderness. It was a two-way road with 12 lanes. No matter how you looked at it, it was a fairly high standard. But in the decades that followed, enormous changes occurred in the city's planning. Countless skyscrapers rose from the ground, and their shadows covered the road from all sides. The buildings protruded horizontally, cutting the enormous road into fragments. They completely covered the sky above the road. Following the complete abandonment of the management of the recycling stratum, this road could only be submerged in the layers of shadows of the skyscrapers. The illegal buildings of the surrounding residents wantonly covered both sides of the road. At this moment, there were countless eyes within those grotesquely shaped buildings. They stared intently at the Jeep that whistled past. It was hard to understand what they meant. So many years have passed and this damned place is still a mess. What are the gangs in charge of this area doing? Cragburst placed his arm across the empty car window frame and shouted towards the outside. "Hey, whose territory is this? Don't you guys usually clean up?" The gang members outside the Jeep paused for a moment. Then their threats and curses grew louder by more than 10 times. There were already people who couldn't bear it any longer. They drove their motorcycles closer, and the sound of air being cut rang out. A thick and long steel chain lashed through the car window. It was a force that could split a person's skull open. Cragburst just lifted his arm and let the chain smash against it. He even coiled it twice before swinging it slightly. The person who attacked was like a kite that had lost control. He flew from his beloved high-displacement motorcycle and was smashed horizontally. This was too ruthless. The motorcycles at the back couldn't dodge in time. In an instant, half of the motorcycles were flipped over. It was a mess. Modified humans. No one knew who shouted this, but the motorcycles that accompanied them all the way dispersed. Some people had already braked and stopped on the spot, no longer following them. But at this moment, a motorcycle that was originally behind them sped up and soon ran alongside the off-road vehicle. The rider grinned maliciously at the car, raised the thick barrel with one hand, and pulled the trigger. The classic shotgun instantly ejected 12 8mm tungsten alloy pellets, covering the entire front of the carriage. Without even looking at the result, the knight swung his arm and loaded the gun. He was about to do it again. But when he raised the muzzle of the gun once more, what met the muzzle was Cragburst's malevolent smile. Cragburst's face was completely unharmed. There was a muffled bang as the rider flew up from the motorcycle. He crossed 8 lanes of traffic and flew into the illegal buildings at the far end. Cragburst leapt out from the car window and took his place. He sat steadily on the motorcycle and snatched the classic shotgun. He roared and used the shotgun like an iron rod. He rushed forward and rushed back, knocking down a group of reckless gangsters in the blink of an eye. He had been cooped up in the car for over 10 minutes, acting as a moving prisoner. That feeling wasn't good at all. The motorcycle beneath him was a bit small compared to his body size, but the feeling of being able to move according to his will and move at will was really great. Crag Burst laughed heartily and accompanied the Tiger Burst off-road vehicle. He roared to his heart's content along with the surging melody. As the vehicle advanced forward, the gangsters who had fallen to the ground quickly disappeared without a trace. Only Crag Burst and the off-road vehicle remained on the road for a time. Crag Burst was singing to his heart's content when he suddenly stooped down and accelerated without any warning. He pulled away at least a body's length of distance in an instant. He caught a glimpse of a line of fire cutting through from the corner of his eye. A hole the size of a wash basin appeared on the road 20 meters behind him. Only then did he hear a peculiar hissing sound enter his ears. Crag Burst chuckled. It was a large-caliber electromagnetic rifle. However, the shooter's aim was terrible to the extreme. That's not right. The shooter didn't have any intention of following up after missing the target. He suddenly sensed something and followed the trajectory of the bullet. He couldn't see any human figures within the pitch-black floor, but there was a pitch-black bird flapping its wings and flying. Crag Burst grinned and transmitted through the Hexa ear. Where's the division of labor? Where's the trust? Speaking of which, you should be pretty good at scouting. How about we go back and give the wilderness a try? Then you need to be prepared to be tricked. Luonan casually replied. He used ink to announce his existence to Crag Burst. But what truly killed the sniper was actually the human-faced arachnid siege hammer. Right now, the pitiful fellow had fainted in front of the window. He probably didn't understand what was going on from start to finish. Luonan's sole body floated within this dangerous area. The range of his senses was close to a kilometer in diameter. An omnidirectional, multi-layered, panoramic picture was presented to him. He suddenly discovered that he should be the most genuine sniper at this very moment. He was in existence like a ghost. He had a panoramic perception with a diameter of a kilometer. Of course, he also had the siege hammer, which could ignore the vast majority of physical defenses. These factors converged together. He could be said to be like a fish in water in this complex environment. He could eliminate those malicious personnel in the quickest and most convenient manner. Luonan truly had some awareness of being an ability user when he used these methods. Yes, this was the ability user of his imagination. This was an extraordinary power that stood above the normal world. Naturally, this was the best proof of the correctness of formatting theory. It was also at this time that Luonan truly understood what kind of restriction his weak fleshly body was when it came to his true abilities. Hey Scout. Go ahead and update your intelligence. This instance's level is too low. Did your enemy specifically use this place to annoy me? Luonan responded, I feel like you should stop the car and properly inspect it. Maybe you can find some clues. Good idea. But this doesn't contradict with scouting ahead. I need a tool. It's best if it's a moving obstacle that can stop my disobedient baby. Let me look. Ha. Chapter 104. Crag Burst's military-modified Tiger Burst SUV was an extremely astonishing vehicle for personal transportation. It could run over the heads of ordinary private cars in its off-road mode. However, the big fellow that had just run into the range of Luonan's mental senses could completely replicate a similar scene onto the Tiger Burst SUV. 5 seconds after Luonan discovered it, the enormous shadow that slowly pressed over finally attracted Crag Burst's attention. The enormous size of the shadow caused Crag Burst, who had been wild and fearless the entire time, to gape subconsciously. He forgot to speak for a time. It was a super heavy road roller. It was over 5 meters tall, and its enormous body occupied 2 car lanes horizontally. It was completely the willful piling of industrial power. Just the vibrating wheels in front of it already exceeded the roof of the Tiger Burst SUV. Perhaps this big fellow was a large tool used in the construction of this main road back in the day. Its appearance was already extremely old. The driver's compartment was already missing its top, and its entire body was covered in grotesque graffiti. However, it had undergone certain modifications. Long and sharp blades were installed on both sides of the vibrating wheels. This allowed it to cover the width of over 4 car lanes. The weight of the vehicle was at least 50 tons. The already damaged asphalt road became even more tragic under the effect of the vibrating wheels as it drove past. Of course, the antique road roller's speed was very ordinary. It definitely didn't exceed 30 kilometers per hour. If the SUV were to turn around, it would be completely easy for this old fellow to eat the dust behind it. Or it could make a small detour and easily pass by it. But the problem was that the AI that controlled the SUV's movements didn't have any awareness that it was about to be smashed into pieces. It continued to maintain its original speed, direction, and route as it moved forward in a perfectly straight line. Hey! Hey! Cragburst did his best to wake his precious up, but it was destined to be futile. The distance between the two sides quickly became 300 meters. 200 meters. The Tigerburst SUV contributed to the majority of the distance traveled, and it continued to do so. Luo Nan noticed that there were at least 5 gun-wielding personnel in the damaged compartment of the road roller other than the driver. They all raised their gun barrels and pointed them at Cragburst's position. 2 of them were electromagnetic rifles with astonishing destructive power. Only the heavens knew how these strictly controlled military firearms ended up here. Did the military also dispose of trash here? Out of the way! Luo Nan threw 2 siege hammers over as he warned Cragburst. The targets were precisely 2 gang members wielding electromagnetic rifles. One of them fell to the ground and fainted. But a bewitching red light suffused the eyes of the other person. He was actually completely unaffected. He quickly adjusted the muzzle of his gun, and flames exploded on it. The metal bullet carried a terrifying initial speed. It crossed a distance of several hundred meters in an instant, directly piercing through the location of Luo Nan's soul body. This shot did not touch anything substantial, but it truly gave Luo Nan a fright. The other party's spiritual sense was very sharp, and his judgment was very accurate. What was even more inconceivable was that he was immune to the siege hammer. Luo Nan had pierced through all of his material defenses, but it seemed that Luo Nan's attack aimed at the mental plane had missed. That gunshot had alarmed Cragburst. The other 3 firearms had already opened fire at this time. They were old-fashioned gunpowder weapons that were commonly seen in the black market. Their power was quite astonishing. Cragburst cursed loudly. The motorcycle suddenly sped up and swerved outwards, dodging the whistling rain of bullets. It narrowly brushed past the twisted blades of the road roller. Luo Nan was left behind. Cragburst let the motorcycle run away crookedly. Cragburst jumped up, and his strong body easily leapt over 4 meters into the air. He directly stepped onto the cockpit of the road roller and smashed it with a heavy fist. The driver was sent flying from the other side. Only now did the others adjust their muzzles. But no one was able to block Cragburst's fist. They fell from the road roller one after another. Cragburst instantly cleared the obstructions. Then he tried to control the big fellow beneath him to make it stop immediately. As long as it didn't move, Cragburst's beloved Tigerburst Jeep wouldn't be smashed into smithereens even if it couldn't avoid a collision. The distance between the 2 vehicles was less than 50 meters at this time. A collision and a crushing would only take 2 or 3 seconds. Cragburst had operated this type of large-scale machine before. He felt that he could do it. But then Luo Nan's sharp warning sound penetrated the bottom of his heart in the form of psychic waves. Dodge! Luo Nan's lack of professionalism was completely exposed at this critical moment. Though he gave a warning, he didn't indicate the direction of danger. Cragburst needed to make his own judgment. Fortunately, Cragburst had ample experience. He was able to discern the degree of danger from Luo Nan's hasty attitude. He didn't hesitate at all and leaped out from the cockpit. He didn't even stop on the road roller. He just flipped over. A plump metal pineapple was tossed into the air at nearly the same time as his movements. It fell right into the cockpit. F***me. Cragburst was shocked when he saw this scene from the corner of his eyes. A grenade! And it was a defensive grenade with the most terrifying killing radius. This sort of crude old-fashioned weapon had an enormous destructive power. It still had a certain place in the military. It could receive miraculous effects in special situations. The grenade was clearly pressed in someone's hand. The person had calculated the time to ignite it. It exploded with a bang while still in midair. Over 1,000 shrapnel were like a whistling storm, covering a vast space of 50 meters. With such an astonishing killing radius, even the gang members who had just fallen from the car were swept up. They screamed miserably. Cragburst wasn't known for his agility, but his mind worked quickly. He borrowed the force to rebound just as his body landed on the ground. He caught up to the road roller with a stride and stuck his body to the side of the car. His series of judgments couldn't be said to be incorrect, but someone was waiting for him here. A fist came smashing straight at him. The fist's speed and timing were all grasped to the peak of perfection. But the most shocking thing was the inconceivable weight. Cragburst received it with a single hand, but his entire upper arm was forcibly deflected. He could only watch helplessly as the heavy fist smashed into the side of his face. Cragburst soared into the air amidst the flying shrapnel, and tumbled to a spot a dozen meters behind the road roller. An enormous rumbling sound came from right in front of the road roller at this time. The 5-ton Tiger Burst Jeep collided with the 50-ton road roller at a speed of nearly 100 kilometers per hour. The former's kinetic energy was reduced to zero in an instant. The front of the car caved in and parts exploded in the air. It was a tragic sight to behold. Although the road roller didn't immediately roll over the Jeep, it maintained its previous speed after a slight pause. It continued to push the scrapped Jeep forward. More and more parts of the Jeep were swept up by the vibrating wheels. It seemed that the most miserable fate was unavoidable. Luo Nan had witnessed everything that had happened before and after the road roller. He was stunned for a time. But at this moment, his attention was placed on the person who had caused all of this. Yes, it was the person who had ignored the human-faced arachnid siege hammer attack. The person who had played dead when Cragburst boarded the car. Then the person who had tossed out a defensive grenade and seized the opportunity to strike Cragburst down with a heavy punch. Now the person had jumped from the road roller onto the Tiger Burst Jeep. Chapter 105. Luo Nan was already able to clearly see the person's appearance. He was a white man, a rare sight in Xia City. He looked to be in his 40s, maybe a bit older. The scars on his face showed that he had been through a lot. Of course, Luo Nan had a deeper impression of this person's left eye. It was a mechanical eye. If one looked closely, they would find that there were no decorations on it. The cold metal structure, as well as the red light in the center that made one's heart tremble, made it difficult for one to treat it with a normal heart. This guy isn't a normal human. Luo Nan's mental senses had been covering the target this entire time. He discovered that this person's appearance was just as it indicated. The metal composition and related structures on this person's body were far greater than that of a normal person. They're modified humans, right? Cough, cough, damn it. Cragburst's voice came through the Hexa ear. Cragburst had been struck down from the car by a fist and had been covered by the destructive shrapnel of the grenade. If Cragburst had been a normal person, he would have died a long time ago. However, Cragburst had reported his safety to Luo Nan at the first instant. Cragburst also understood the relevant information of the enemy, displaying his robust physique and experienced. Modified humans? Luo Nan had some understanding of the relevant concepts. He saw that there was still some time before Cragburst would catch up, so he used his senses to scan in greater detail while exchanging information with Cragburst. You're saying that he's like the military's mechanical warriors? What mech warrior? He's just a modified human. There's no other way to describe it, and this modification has been abolished for almost 20 years, at least on the surface. Is he over 40 years old? Yeah, pretty much. That should be it. He's pretty good at using military equipment, and he's pretty good at scamming people. But a guy like him must have special privileges. He has to report to the SCA every year. Why is he here? Cragburst felt that this was incomprehensible, and so did Luo Nan. The gang members of the recycling stratum might seem lawless, with all kinds of weapons, guns, and grenades, making it a mini-arsenal, but that was because the government had basically given up on the governance of the recycling stratum. As a matter of fact, most of them had extremely low clearance due to their criminal records. Under the strict control of the credit clearance network in today's society, they could only be tyrants on the recycling stratum. Once they stepped out of the recycling stratum and into the public, they would be closely monitored. If they did anything sensitive, law enforcement officers would appear above their heads and send them to jail. It was hard to imagine that a special forces soldier who had undergone military modification would come here to make a living. His special authority was as eye-catching as a lighthouse on the SCA's surveillance network. The government would never allow such a dangerous person to work with the gangs in the recycling stratum. As for special situations like committing a monstrous crime, it would be more meaningful for them to escape into the wilderness instead of here. No matter what, this guy has angered me. I will have a good talk with him. Cragburst gnashed his teeth on the other side. But soon after he slapped his thigh. Found it. It's here. Keep an eye on him, I'll be right there. He found the high-powered motorcycle that had fallen in the middle of the road, turned around, and chased after it. In about half a minute, he would be able to fight for his reputation again. Luo Nan focused his attention on the altered human. Actually, Luo Nan was more interested in this person's current behavior than in identifying his identity. After striking down Cragburst, the altered human arrived atop the heavily deformed jeep. It tore apart the roof and entered the driver's compartment, which could no longer be seen. Next, the altered human smashed the control panel with a punch. He extended his hand inside and fished for something. Luo Nan couldn't help but associate this scene with the loss of control of the car's AI, and the metal bug ejected from Yan Yongbu's car. Without a doubt, Yan Yongbu had done something to the jeep. His methods were certainly closely related to the metal bug that had sunk into the jeep. From then on, the development of the situation deviated from the normal track. And right now, this altered human seemed to be acting as a liaison, a recycler, retrieving the metal bug. This kind of behavior was quite compatible with the recycling stratum. And from this point of view, perhaps the metal bug was a very crucial thing. Perhaps it involved some deep secrets of Yan Yongbu's? Luo Nan's mental senses became even more meticulous when he thought of this. Though his soul body couldn't do much right now, he wanted to lock onto the target of the other first before considering his next step. The altered human was certainly aware of his detection, just like how he had sensed the siege hammer. However, his thirst for his target clearly surpassed everything else. He just raised his head and shot a cold glance, but he didn't actually lock onto Luo Nan's position. He just continued to lower his head and search. Suddenly, the altered human's arm that had extended into the control panel paused for a moment. His cold and stiff face had a change, forming into a slightly sinister smile. Then he pulled his hand out. His fingertips were pinched with a metal bug the size of a grain of rice. It was motionless right now, more like a work of art than a tool. The altered human raised the metal bug before his eyes. It was like he was looking at a treasure, carefully sizing it up. The smile on his face deepened with every glance. The intensity of the red light in his mechanical eyes continued to grow. Luo Nan took advantage of the metal bug's appearance to use his mental senses to cut across its surface in an attempt to understand its internal structure. But he discovered that it wasn't easy to balance distance and precision at the same time. He was separated by a distance of over 100 meters, and the precision of his senses was at most on the millimeter level. It was already very difficult for him to analyze the interior of the jeep. Right when Luo Nan was considering whether or not he should get a bit closer, a high-powered motorcycle rumbled from behind the road roller. Soon, it circled around the reamer and ran alongside the deformed jeep. Cragburst gave a provocative gesture to the driver's seat atop the motorcycle. "Hey, come at me again if you have the guts. I'll let you use only one hand." The altered human's smile faintly faded. His ice-cold mechanical eyes cut to Cragburst's side, but he didn't immediately respond. Cragburst's provocation continued, but it was mixed with something else. "Hi, Cragburst. Used to be from District 55 of the Coastal Garrison. Give me your name. I'll burn incense for you later." The altered human's lips and teeth opened and closed slightly within the jeep's driver's seat. He spoke for the first time, but the feeling was that he was mocking Cragburst. "A soldier? You're not?" Cragburst discovered that there was a problem with his judgment, so there was no need for him to be polite. He was just about to exert his strength to leap and attack. But in the next moment, his opponent made an odd move. The altered human opened his mouth and stuck out his tongue. He placed the metal bug between his fingers on it, rolled it up, and sent this toy into his mouth. There was even a clear swallowing motion. He actually swallowed the metal bug. Chapter 106. As soon as he finished speaking, Black Jack leaped up and jumped down from the other side of the cockpit. His timing was perfect. At that moment, The road roller pushed the jeep to the place where the gang member's car had been flipped over. At that moment, the group of people had yet to leave. They stayed in the middle of the road and looked at the road roller that was moving slowly towards them. At first, they were dumbfounded. Then, they shouted and wanted to drive their motorcycles around it. But at that moment, Jack jumped down from the jeep and grabbed a motorcycle. He then sped up, circled around the other side of the blade, and sped back in the direction he came from. "You were a boss just a second ago, and now you're dodging?" Cragburst cussed loudly. He lifted the front wheel of the motorcycle and forcefully made a U-turn. The motorcycle scraped dangerously past the twisting blades, and then the engine roared as it accelerated in pursuit. The speed of the two motorcycles was more than 100 kilometers per hour. In the darkness of the night, they disappeared in the blink of an eye. It wasn't a problem for Luo Nan's soul body to chase after them, but Ink had some difficulties. The two motorcycles had already driven out of his range of senses during his moment of hesitation, and they chased after them. On this side, the road roller pushed the off-road vehicle, rumbling as it rolled over. Everywhere he passed, there was a mess. The gang members cut a sorry figure as they hid to the side of the road. They cursed Cragburst, but even more cursed Jack. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly. He listened attentively and discovered that some of the content was very interesting. But it was fragmented and fragmented. He was unable to grasp the gist of it. Because of his attention, Ink also came over, and it was very eye-catching. One of the gang members was annoyed and happened to have a gun in his hand. He raised his hand and was about to shoot, but in the blink of an eye, he fell to the ground like a wooden stake, unconscious. The gang members, who had been happily scolding him, were all stunned. They looked at their comrade who had suddenly fainted, then looked up in a daze. At this moment, Ink spiraled down and stopped on the eaves of an illegal building by the side of the road. It looked down at the group of weak chickens known as the gang. In the darkness, the black crows stared at you with their dark eyes. On the ground were their companions who had inexplicably fallen because they had offended them. Such a scene made the dozen or so members of the gang at the scene all weak in the knees. Crow continued to remain silent, and the more it was like this, the more anxious and uneasy it was. Luo Nan actually felt a bit awkward being by Ink's side. He didn't want to stare at each other like this. Gathering information was the most important thing right now. The problem was that Ink was a crow. How could it communicate with humans? It would be better if it was a parrot. He could see the benefits of the hexa ear and the psychic wave network right now. Otherwise, he and Cragburst wouldn't have been able to connect. Oh, psychic wave network? Luo Nan's train of thought jumped once more. If it was just a network connection, then the heavily chained crow within the format pyramid would also count? At this moment, there was an additional image of a crow in the format pyramid. It was Ink, and it was on the second level, which was the staff level. Of course Luo Nan didn't understand bird language, but his communication with Ink was telepathic. There were no obstructions at all. Even with the foundation of hypnosis, the smooth communication between the man and the bird was beyond common sense. If it could be done between humans and crows, what couldn't it be done between humans? Luo Nan made a decision as soon as his thoughts reached this point. First, he needed to establish a connection and use the heavily chained crow. But what value did these gang members have in absorbing them? Luo Nan was still a bit of a neat freak. He hesitated for a moment before his thoughts spun. Perhaps he could use something else instead? The human-faced arachnid's gloomy, cold, and bizarre gaze swept across the group of gang members. Of course, none of the gang members were able to see the human-faced arachnid. But being targeted by that bizarre crow was enough to make them panic. The group of people were stuck between a rock and a hard place when the crow suddenly spread its wings and screeched. It was hoarse and unpleasant to listen to, causing everyone to shiver. More importantly, a weak yet inexplicably clear voice directly rang out in the depths of their minds at the same time the screech rang out. It coiled at the bottom of their hearts. I ask, you answer. Oh my God! Miserable and panic-stricken cries rang out. Some people turned around and ran. At the same time, there were also people who didn't make a sound. Their eyes rolled back as they fell to the ground. This time Luo Nan really didn't do anything. This brother was the one who fainted from fright. Of course, the gang members who tried to escape soon received a siege hammer that was neither light nor heavy. They didn't faint, but they were in great pain. They fell to the ground, clutching their heads as they screeched. From start to finish, they saw this savage and bizarre scene. The gang members literally froze to death on the spot. Monsters, mutants, black technology. All sorts of absurd thoughts came and went, but they really didn't dare to move their feet. The road roller rumbled away into the distance, gradually disappearing. The road surface was silent for a time. I ask. You answer. Luo Nan repeated his previous words. At the same time, he was also paying attention to the changes in the format pyramid. The human-faced arachnid was located on the technician level. It was currently the center of all the changes. Following Luo Nan's decision, this Darksider species spat out a spider silk-like thread, projecting it into the turbid flow of emotions. The human-faced arachnid was like a skilled fisherman. It used the spider silk to hook up fish one after another. It tossed them to the lowest level of the format pyramid to stand side by side with the images of Xie Junping and Cat Eyes. However, they were much fainter. They were like fragile bubbles that could burst at any time. In the real world, there were over a dozen gang members. Without exception, all of them were brought under the control of the human-faced arachnid. There was nothing that could be easier than this when the emotions of fear spread wantonly. As the mastermind behind the scenes, this was the first time Luo Nan saw how the human-faced arachnid controlled its target. He was stupefied for a time. So it was actually this simple? In any case, with the establishment of the local area network and the formation of the mental connection, the following matters would be much easier. A spiritual wave was transmitted from the Hexa ear approximately 2 minutes later. Cragburst had taken the initiative to contact him. Fuck. Scout, where have you been? Luo Nan was able to guess the result just by listening to the emotions in her voice. You lost them? That black rat. He can't do anything else, but his ability to dig holes in alleys is top-notch, and he even shot from the back. Hey, where's the scouting ahead? Your speed is over 100. I can't keep up. Of course, Crow wasn't able to keep up. Luo Nan obviously wouldn't explain this to Cragburst. F*CK, 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 F*CK. Cragburst let out a string of expletives. You need to pick a useful one for your spirit attachment. You need to be fast. Something like a peregrine falcon or a spear falcon. Aren't they all good? What's with a crow? Luo Nan didn't get angry despite Cragburst's complaints. The more Cragburst complained like this, the more it showed that this big guy who came from the military didn't treat Luo Nan as an outsider. Moreover, Cragburst began to trust and rely on Luo Nan's abilities. This was a very good start. Sure enough, Cragburst came to his senses and felt embarrassed. He coughed twice. Since I know you have this ability, I'll help you buy a good bird from the society later. As long as the price is right, it's not impossible to get a mutant. Sure. You can help me pick one later. Chapter 107. Who the hell knows where I am? Let me look at the map. Oh? Riverwu District's Deshang building. The top looks bright and fresh, but the bottom looks like this? Deshang? Luo Nan remembered that this was the information he had just obtained. It looked like Cragburst's pursuit ability couldn't be underestimated. They were already very close to their final target. Wait a moment. I'll be right there. Ink soared into the sky, shuttling back and forth between the intersecting buildings. Luo Nan's soul body rode the human-faced arachnid to the side. The crow's flying speed was really too slow. The human-faced arachnid didn't even use a third of its strength. It followed leisurely and leisurely. Luo Nan didn't put any energy into flying. Instead, he used the panoramic view of his mental senses to observe this dark place that he had heard of for a long time but had never set foot in. The turbid night of the recycling stratum gave him a very subtle feeling. At the very least, he didn't have too many experiences of flying in the night sky. It was more like he was swimming in a stream. And as time passed, the panoramic view cut open the deepest parts of this area and presented them before his eyes. This feeling continued to deepen and mutate. It wasn't just water. It was sewage. Everything presented in the panoramic view. The concrete details were far too jumbled and messy. There was no time to analyze them one by one. However, the things that were briefly scanned, such as gangs, prostitutes, drug dealers, casinos, and the abstractions of violence, lust, greed, numbness, and so on, interweaved and dyed together to form countless turbid colors that splashed over his head and face. Everything converged into a roaring turbid current that washed over the entire recycling stratum. It converged into the surging tide of emotions that drowned the entire Xia city. In the end, this was just a tributary. It was a bit dirtier. The human-faced arachnid was quite comfortable in this environment. It was like a fish in water. But soon Luo Nan discovered that the human-faced arachnid wandered in the turbid current of emotions. It had a slight appetite. Weren't these turbid negative emotions the food it craved the most in the past? This fellow relied on these sorts of things to grow stronger and stronger. But right now, it seemed to be disdainful. Luo Nan tried to communicate with the human-faced arachnid. His analysis of the human-faced arachnid's information was far from complete. If he forced himself to understand it, there would be a lot of confusion and ambiguity. In the end, he could only confirm one thing. The human-faced arachnid had already undergone a certain level of evolution, so much so that its original food was no longer able to satisfy its needs. After all, there was no fish that relied on drinking water to survive. Perhaps the evolution of the human-faced arachnid was equivalent to a transition from a plankton to a fish. Should he congratulate her? Right when Luo Nan was racking his brains over the problem of the human-faced arachnid eating, the Dashang building was already in sight. Cragburst had been waiting impatiently for a long time. Right now, he was standing on the 10th floor of the skyscraper, gazing into the distance. When he saw ink flying over, he waved his hand excitedly from afar. "Hurry, I found an entrance here." Ink flapped its wings, searching for a place to land. How could Cragburst wait any longer? He pointed to his shoulder and said, "Over here, I guarantee your safety." Luo Nan wasn't polite with him. He gave Ink an order and directly descended onto Cragburst's shoulder. Immediately, the two of them began to exchange information. Everything below the 30th floor of the building, including the underground buildings, has a zigzag structure. The division between the inside and the outside is actually an isolation zone. Many of the buildings adjacent to the recycling stratum are built like this. Cragburst had researched quite a bit of information while he was waiting. The isolation zone is a one-way passageway. Security is tight and all permissions are locked down. There are no normal channels to enter the business district of the building from the recycling stratum. It's the same no matter who it is. Outside of the isolation zone is the world of the gangs. They have dug through countless rat holes here. They have dug through not just the Dashang building, but the neighboring buildings as well. There are quite a few people living inside. Luo Nan listened to Cragburst's chatter and matched this part of the situation with his own understanding of the information. He organized his words and said, "According to the information I've obtained, there is an underground fighting arena here in the Dashang building. People often come here to participate in gambling fights. Many of them are big and wealthy guests who throw money away. Jack is the ace host and referee of the fighting arena. He might also be one of the bosses behind the scenes." Underground fighting. Cragburst's interest was immediately piqued when he heard the word fighting. How come I've never heard of this before? I've been to practically all the fighting arenas in Xia City, public, private, legal, and illegal. It's probably because this place is reserved for minors. The periphery of the Dashang building's isolation zone was just as Cragburst said. It was dirty, messy, and crisscrossed with dark tunnels. Luo Nan was able to obtain a lot of useful information from the mouths of the gang members. In addition to the panoramic image support of his mental senses, Luo Nan was able to move more smoothly and freely than the gangs entrenched here. Cragburst originally had a belly full of anger because he was unsuccessful in his pursuit of Jack. He wanted to vent. But he never expected that Luo Nan would just cheat and open the map the moment he arrived. He only saw the shadows of the gang members chasing and weaving their way in and out, but he could only eat the dust from behind. The number of people he actually met was few and far between. It was hard for him to put his strength to use. He wasn't an idiot. Naturally, he could feel that Luo Nan wasn't just using the crow to scout. Instead, Luo Nan had a higher level of perception at play. Good boy. There's something wrong with your ability. In terms of range, even cat eyes isn't this abnormal. Cat eyes. Luo Nan was quite interested in this unruly woman who suddenly appeared in his own pyramid. Since the intensity of their advance wasn't that great, He just asked casually, "What's the range of her long-range perception?" Her all-encompassing perception ranges from 50 to 70 meters. Her psychic perception has a limit of 3,720 kilometers when she's in a good state. How much? Luonan nearly choked awake. Are you talking about kilometers or meters? It's kilometers without a doubt. Cragburst laughed out loud. It's inconceivable, right? But this is the terrifying aspect of long-range perception. As long as the feeling comes, there's no reasoning with you. Back in the day, Cat Eyes did one of the most amazing things. She used her extrasensory psychic perception to guide a 1,000,000-ton nuclear-penetrating warhead. It smashed directly into the underground lair of the mutant species in the wilderness. It was a standard hit to the soul. A bunch of arrogant big shots from the military all knelt before her. Luonan didn't know what to say for a time. He had been proud of the range of his soul-body senses before, but he immediately encountered a standard that he could only look up to. But when he thought about it again, such an amazing person had actually entered his pyramid without a trace. She was more or less affected and suppressed by him. The feeling was quite subtle. Cragburst concluded. In a certain sense, Cat Eyes' ability should be the closest type to that of a psychic, but it isn't that mysterious. Aside from being unstable and being powerless against the Darksider species, she practically doesn't have any other flaws. So, by all means, don't offend her. Otherwise, she can find you in any corner of the city. She can take advantage of the time when you're in a dream. Crack. Cragburst made a motion of twisting Ink's neck and laughed loudly. He reached back to pinch Ink's head. You really need to be careful. I felt that you and her seemed to be innately incompatible that day. Ha! There's no way out? Chapter 108. The other side of the wall is the quarantine area. There's also an underground fighting arena. Cragburst couldn't see anything other than the white wall. But Luonan was different. His soul body had already passed through the wall. He had gone in and out of the building countless times. He was probably more clear about the layout inside than the designer. He combined the information he obtained earlier and explained to Cragburst. Originally, the quarantine area didn't allow for any other arrangements aside from surveillance and defense systems. But the management of the building made modifications in order to ensure the size of the area and the viewing effect. They occupied a portion of the surrounding area. This formed a fuzzy zone. The gangs of the recycling stratum can interact with the gamblers of the upper world. One side pays in money, and the other side pays in manpower. Jack is one of the true controllers of this fuzzy zone. This is his lair and his cornucopia. Cragburst didn't ask for more details. As a man who frequently entered and exited the underground fighting arena, he was even more clear than Luonan about the inside of the building. The management of the building should be the house of bankers. Only through this place could one transform incorporeal credit into tangible wealth in the current society of credit and authority. But he didn't care about this at all. He was only interested in how to capture Jack. Jack is in the fighting arena, right? How do we get in? Do we smash a passageway out? Cragburst was a bit eager to give it a try. This is a passageway. It's used for emergency evacuation. The design is that it can only be opened from the inside. Luonan let Ink flap its wings to wake up this bro whose brain was filled with violence. The problem was that it was completely ineffective. Roar roar. Let's be a bit more direct. Watch me. No. Wait. Wait a few more seconds. Luonan's voice had yet to fall when the white wall in front of him slid to one side. The inner layer of steel plates slid in the opposite direction. Only then did the ice-cold metal wall appear. But this wall also split open from the middle, revealing a dimly lit passageway. 3 layers of protection, especially the last layer that was 10 centimeters thick, made Cragburst speechless for a time. He didn't bring up using violence to open a passageway again. As for the passageway in front of them, it wasn't too long. One could see to the end with a glance. The door on the other side was half open. An even more intense light seeped in. There was also clamorous noise coming in. Clearly, the outside was a certain location of the underground fighting arena. Cragburst first looked at his feet. There was a person sitting down in the passageway. The person was already unconscious. He turned his head and looked around. Soon, he found that there was a password plate on top of the man's head. The corresponding screen showed that the password plate had been successfully opened. "Your mole." Cragburst quickly corrected this preposterous thought, but the following conjecture was even more preposterous to him. "Don't tell me that you controlled this guy through the wall and made him open the door?" Bullseye. Speaking of which, the effects of hypnosis combined with the human-faced arachnid's fishing technique were quite decent. Luo Nan just chuckled through the hexa ear, maintaining a bit of a sense of mystery. He indicated to Cragburst to close this emergency passageway. This place was certainly connected to the control room. Though they couldn't hide it for too long, they could hide it for as long as they could. What the hell, this isn't just spirit attachment. It's some kind of ability enhancement. Actually, you can let the crow have some of your abilities, right? Do you have wizard blood? Or do you come from some secret order? Cragburst's thoughts were getting more and more outrageous. Luo Nan was really worried that the words "his soul is in an out-of-body state" would come out of Cragburst's mouth. Luo Nan could only interrupt Cragburst once more. "Let's speed things up. It's very likely that Jack is only using this place as a transit point. The isolated area can't enter the business district of Dashang Building, but there's a direct passageway to the upper city district." Cragburst immediately shut his mouth. He simply cleaned up the scene and passed through the passageway. There was a circular hallway outside. The curvature was extremely obvious, making people feel that the space was indeed limited. The operator of this place had indeed made use of the space to the extreme. On the concave side of the wall, there was a curved wall projection every now and then. On it, there was an exciting scene in the arena. Sure enough, they're all kids. Cragburst's brows furrowed. He was a professional, so he felt vexed by the various scenes displayed on the screen. They have a certain amount of fighting techniques, but they're all competing in the dark and ruthless. They're trying to kill people. Many of the scenes of being knocked down on the screen had broken hands and feet, or they had been struck in a vital spot. Cragburst wouldn't even blink an eye at these things in the adult fighting world. But the two combatants on the screen didn't look to be older than 15, which was the same age as Luo Nan. They were a group of half-grown kids. They didn't hold back in the slightest. Did they really know what this represented? Many of them knew, judging by the ominous glint in their eyes. And the feeling brought about by this sort of warped thinking made people feel even more uncomfortable. The sound of footsteps came from both sides of the hallway at this time. Cragburst's intentions were to just go up and be done with it. But Luo Nan indicated for Cragburst to go to the other side, to a room with a thick curtain covering the door. Cragburst thought that this was the passageway to the fighting arena, but he discovered that it seemed to be a lounge after entering. The layout was very simple and crude. There were only wardrobes and benches. The passageway to the fighting arena was further inside. There was already a person in the lounge right now. He wore combat shorts, and his upper body was bare. He didn't wear shoes, and a towel was draped over his head. His face was drooping. It seemed that he was conserving his energy. He should be the next competitor to take the stage. He didn't have a coach or a friend by his side. He was all by himself. His entire body was cold and gloomy. He actually didn't react at all to Cragburst, the big guy who had suddenly barged in. Cragburst was a bit stupefied. Then he discovered that the room was actually very noisy. There was a display screen in the lounge as well, but it was a bit smaller than the one outside. The sound from the display screen was quite loud. It made people wonder what use this lounge could serve. The display screen just so happened to jump to a new scene at this time. "Look, Jack." Luo Nan reminded Cragburst to pay attention. The two's minds shook, but they soon discovered that this was just a video clip. Jack was wearing a referee uniform at the time. He wore a bow tie. His body was ramrod straight, and he had a sense of propriety. Aside from the unsightly scars on his face, he looked more like a noble steward than a referee. It was no wonder that his hosting and refereeing were so popular. This match isn't bad. Cragburst used a professional gaze to evaluate the tall and skinny one. His foundation is very solid. He has a sense of propriety in his attacks. He's a very good control-type competitor. Hold on. There's something wrong with the editing. The editor had chosen this shot to be the scene of the tall and skinny kid slowing down, dodging, and circling around, which Cragburst had praised. It was completely different from the intense fighting scene before. Such camera language should be hinting at something. Luo Nan discovered that the competitor, who had his head lowered all this time, had raised his head to stare at the display screen. His thin and pale face was revealed beneath the towel. He was unexpectedly calm, and he continued to ignore Crag Burst to the side. Chapter 109. The focus of the human-faced arachnid's attention was on the quiet and silent competitor. This person's age was about the same as Luo Nan's. His reserved and gloomy nature was about the same. However, the reason for the human-faced arachnid's attention was certainly not because of this. The feedback Luo Nan received was mostly anticipation and hunger. He was like a glutton, staring fixedly at a dish that was gradually cooking on the stove. He felt it was a pity to eat it, but he was impatient to not eat it. "This is the new food you've chosen?" Luo Nan had just been pondering over the changes in the human-faced arachnid's diet. Now he had a true reference. He couldn't help but spend a bit of energy to pay attention, but how could he understand it in a short period of time? And at this moment, the camera turned. The strangely edited match ended, and there was even a post-match scene next. The two competitors stood in the center of the fighting stage, and Jack stood between them. It seemed that it was time to announce the victor. From the previous clips, the lanky kid's advantage was extremely clear, even though he had inexplicably less clips. He displayed an astonishing level of control. However, Jack wasn't in a hurry to announce the victor. He lowered his head to look at his watch. At this moment, the background music of the edited scene strangely stopped. This caused the sharp whistles and whistles from all four sides of the stands to grow louder, more clamorous, and more deafening. Finally, Jack made a move. He spread his arms, but he didn't act like a normal referee, grabbing the competitor's hand. Instead, he wrapped his arms around the shoulders of the two teenagers. It looked extremely intimate. But at this moment, the children's bodies went rigid. Jack wasn't in a hurry to announce the victor. Instead, he spoke like he was reciting a poem. His voice passed through a miniature microphone and spread throughout the entire arena. "As the referee, I must judge fairly. This is a conservative fight." The screams from the stands suddenly rose to a whole new level. "A fight that has gone beyond time." The screams and cheers grew louder and louder. Some people even stood up and waved their arms towards the fighting stage. This spurred on even more people. Soon, no one was sitting in the entire fighting arena. Jack's expression didn't change as he spat out his final judgment. "A fake fight." The people in the stands went completely crazy. The chaotic clamor had already converged into a simple yet heart-sinking sound. "Kill, kill, kill." On the fighting stage, the faces of the two teenagers were deathly pale. They wanted to struggle, but they were firmly clamped down by Jack's iron arms. Jack said with a smile, "There are no losers, and there are no winners." Before he finished his sentence, Jack exerted force in both of his arms. The crisp sound of bones breaking was transmitted to the entire audience through the microphone on his body. The shoulder bones of the two youths instantly fell apart. A powerful force closed them up, crushing their sternum and spines. Then, the two youths who were no longer human were forcibly hugged in front of Jack's chest, causing them to hug each other. A pair of faces that were bleeding from all 7 orifices collided with each other, and then softened into 2 piles of dead flesh. Jack relaxed his arms, and the 2 corpses slid down. Without even looking, he crossed his arms and waved. "Team ending, friendly match. Pass. F***CK. Without waiting for the next scene to change, the display suddenly caved in and cracked. Crag Burst's fist had directly smashed it apart. Such an intense reaction thoroughly exposed Crag Burst's position. But how could he care? He spat again. "A bunch of dregs." The quiet contestant turned his face. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but this emotion was extinguished before it could reach his face. In the end, he simply spat out 2 words. "You guys?" Crag Burst stared at him with wide eyes. "Kid, you want to participate in this bullshit fight?" "I'm the next one." Crag Burst waved his hand roughly. "Fuck the next one. Since I'm here, there will never be a next one. That way leads to the fighting arena, right?" Crag Burst was about to step out as he spoke. Not only was his sense of justice bursting, but the things that happened in this fighting arena made him, a fighting enthusiast, feel disgusted. Luo Nan helplessly called for Crag Burst to stop when he saw that Crag Burst was about to smash the fighting arena to pieces. This was already completely out of line with their original intentions, okay? I'm willing to bet that as soon as you enter the arena, Jack will immediately disappear without a trace. Even if you knock over everyone in the arena, what's the point of letting this murderer escape? That's the problem with your scouting. Why haven't you found that black-skinned rat yet? Cragburst made the same mistake as Luo Nan in his excitement. He forgot that he was communicating through the psychic wave network and directly spoke. The quiet competitor saw that Cragburst was talking to the air. His eyes streaked across the air and didn't see anything else. In the end, his eyes stopped on the crow on Cragburst's shoulder. He opened his mouth a little hesitant but finally said, "Sir, are you talking to the crows?" Cragburst stared blankly for a moment. He turned his head to look and said baffled, Yeah. Cragburst regretted it as soon as the words left his mouth. Such a reply was too stupid. But at that moment, the quiet contestant, who had been expressionless all this while, actually smiled. "So it's Mr. Crow. Can I talk to him too?" A slightly shaky smile and surprisingly childish words blossomed in the narrow lounge. It was also at this time that Cragburst and Luo Nan truly and clearly realized that this fighter, who was about to walk onto the fighting stage and receive fatal adjudication, was truly just a half-grown child. At the same time, the deathly still eyes of the 15 or 16-year-old boy in front of him flashed slightly. His entire body's life force and spiritual energy rippled out from his long and narrow eyes. Cragburst didn't know what to say when faced with such a face. In the end, he could only shrug his shoulders. Fine. If he's willing. Borrowing the force of Cragburst's shrug, ink flew and jumped, landing directly on the arm of the quiet contestant. Of course, this was under Luo Nan's indication. The quiet contestant was delighted by Ink's intelligence. Then he slightly straightened up and bowed very solemnly toward Ink. "My name is Rue Wan. They call me Marauder, but I'm nothing more than a crow. This is my 100th match, and it's also my last match. I hope that Mr. Crow can give me his blessings." This time, there were a few more words. Luo Nan discovered that the quiet contestant was called Rue Wen, right? His voice was quite special. It seemed that his voice hadn't gone through puberty yet. There was a bit of sharpness within the hoarseness, and there was a natural resonance of breath. It was very unique. It made people feel that if he were to sing, he would be quite good. Cragburst didn't quite understand. He tried to interrupt but was stopped by Luo Nan. This sort of feeling was far too familiar. The current Rue Wan was the same as Luo Nan many times. He was completely trapped in his own circle, forming his own logic. There was no need to forcefully break it. Perhaps this was the chance for him to relax the most. It was the moment he treasured the most. And at this time, the human-faced arachnid began to stir. Within the eyes of this newly promoted glutton, there was a bright seed rising from the dark and desolate abyss. Even though the seed was bound and surrounded by the filthy and turbid streams, it was pure and untainted. It was pure and transparent. Chapter 110. Luo Nan's senses were synchronized with the human-faced arachnids. The human-faced arachnid was paying intense attention to Luo Nan. Such a strong stimulation also made some of the muddled information clear. Sure enough, the human-faced arachnid no longer treated the turbid flow of emotions as food after leaping from a plankton to a fish. What it was truly interested in right now was the spiritual seed that undulated up and down within the turbid flow. In reality, it was something that lived within the turbid flow of emotions, yet it was completely different from the turbid flow. It was something that possessed more vitality. It wasn't easy to form such a spiritual seed. One must have the mental cultivation to overcome filthy emotions and desires, as well as a basic positive attitude in order to finally take shape. Just like Rue Wen, he had only been in embryonic form a long time ago. It wasn't until he spoke to Mr. Crow that he broke free from his deathly still and cold state of mind. Only then did this spiritual seed finally sublimate and leap to a new level. Cragburst actually had a similar spiritual seed as well, but it was hidden deep within his powerful magma-like life force. It wasn't as pure and transparent as Rue Wen's. From the perspective of the human-faced arachnid, the spiritual seed was an incomparable delicacy. Swallowing the spiritual seed was both a form of eating and evolution. Its evolution method was very lethal. It basically used the vitality and spirituality of others as nourishment. Its path of evolution was built on the foundation of destroying the hopes of others. Without a doubt, the human-faced arachnid was an existence that was evil to the extreme. Even if Luo Nan relied on its strength to a large degree, he would not deny this point. Although he did not deny it, it did not mean that he would allow it. Otherwise, what was the difference between it and the human-faced arachnid? Luo Nan's complete control over the human-faced arachnid was displayed without restraint. No matter how intense the human-faced arachnid's desire to eat was, the heavily chained crow shook, and it had to be well behaved. At this moment, someone walked in from the passageway that led to the fighting arena. The moment the door opened, the noise from the fighting arena almost overwhelmed the small resting room. Fortunately, it was quickly isolated again. That person said loudly, "Rue-1, get ready to go on stage. The incomparable 100th match." Who are you?" "Your grandfather." Cragburst revealed an evil grin towards that person. Before that person could cry out in shock, Cragburst slapped him unconscious to the ground. Rue-1 turned a blind eye to this. He was already completely immersed in his own world. He stood up and gently swung his arms up and down. "Well, Mr. Crow, here comes my last battle. You won't be stingy with your blessings, right?" Swish. Perhaps it was because Ink was quite satisfied from being swayed, but Ink had already opened its mouth before Luo Nan could speak. Its hoarse voice was unpleasant to hear, but it made Rue-1 smile once more. He crossed his arms and walked over to Cragburst's side. He returned the ink. "Thank you, sir. You and Mr. Crow's arrival is my fortune." "Ahem, nothing." With Cragburst's straightforward temperament, he really wasn't suited to dealing with a reserved and autistic person like Rue-1. The logic of both sides was not on the same line. Luckily, Luo Nan extended a helping hand at this time. He gave Cragburst some advice, allowing Cragburst to ask for information, even though his words were very clumsy. "You just said 100 matches. Is there any special meaning to it?" "After 100 matches, I can choose to walk the path of judgment and leave the arena." "Hee, it's all tricks, and they've been used too much." Cragburst had seen similar situations far too many times in other underground arenas. Are there challenges on the road of adjudication? Of course. Who made it out in the past? Since the establishment of the fighting arena, the ones closest to 100 victories have been me and my brother. All right. I thank you for your praise before on behalf of him. Luo Nan and Cragburst thought of the skinny and tall youth who died under Jack's iron arm at the same time. Cragburst smashed his fist against his palm. Isn't the truth quite clear? What bullshit road of adjudication? This fighting arena never thought of letting you guys leave alive. The truth was indeed quite clear. This fighting arena was jointly established by a group of rich people and gangs of the recycling stratum. Contestants like Rue-1 were mostly poor orphans of the recycling stratum. They were controlled by gangs and underwent harsh training to fight each other to the death for the amusement of the rich. Cragburst hoped that Rue-1 could clarify the truth. Leave? That's just a gimmick. A gimmick, nothing more. But Rue-1 didn't respond. She just tore off the towel on top of her head, revealing her refreshing jet-black short hair. The contours of her face were actually quite delicate and pretty. Her delicate and pretty appearance was a bit out of place in this cruel beating arena. Cragburst was still persuading her. Hey, just join us. I'll take you to kill our way out. Rue-1 walked forward in silence. Cragburst extended his hand in an attempt to grab her, but Rue-1 didn't even turn her head. Only a cold and clear voice transmitted over. I'm going to kill our way out. I'm going to do it the way my brother and I did. Cragburst froze and stopped. Rue-1 pushed open the soundproof door and walked out with large strides. DJ's resounding voice transmitted over. This is an unprecedented 100-victory battle. Our wing of death, the undefeated plunderer, Rue-1. Cheers could be heard from the arena. Amidst the chaotic and distorted roars, there was a strange voice mixed with it. Male and female monsters. Flat-chested witches. Take it off completely. Verify her identity. Cragburst couldn't catch his breath properly. He choked and nearly caused Ink to go askew. Luo Nan's soul body nearly lost its grip on the chain and let the human-faced arachnid charge out. A woman? I couldn't tell at all. Cragburst was stupefied in place. Who would have thought? Rue Wen's upper body was bared from start to finish. Her attitude was natural, and she didn't have any obvious secondary sexual characteristics. Even if she did, it would be submerged under the lines of her thin and hard muscles. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed as well, but this awkward thought was forcibly severed when Rue Wen stepped onto the fighting stage and exposed her thin body to the gazes of thousands of people. Cragburst held open the soundproof door that was about to close, so that the clamor of the fighting arena could be heard in an unending stream. "Oh, I'll grant you the path to leave. Bye. Let's start the auction today. I want to taste the taste of the flat-chested witch." Cheers, clamor, and whistles rang out without end. Several hundred rich and powerful people, who were likely to make a name for themselves in various fields, used the body and life of this little girl to obtain stimulation that couldn't be obtained on the level of normal society. And Rue Wen? The turbid flow of filth surged up from all directions. But that pure spiritual seed remained untainted by even a speck of dust. This girl, whose gender was hard to distinguish, had already been completely shielded from the influence of the filth of the outside world. But no matter what, why was such a girl placed in such a filthy place? Cragburst didn't make a sound as he walked forward with large strides. Luo Nan was a bit unable to restrain himself. He actually didn't stop Cragburst when he walked forward. Cragburst walked out of the passageway. It was reasonable to say that his large and unfamiliar face was the type that would attract a lot of attention. But right now, the vast majority of the people in the fighting arena had their attention focused on the fighting stage. They didn't notice Cragburst at all. But Rue Wen, who was on the fighting stage, turned her head without any warning. Her cold and clear gaze made Cragburst halt once more. He wanted to advance, but he couldn't. Chapter 111. Rue Wen quickly straightened her body and calmly stood in the center of the boxing ring. Her head was slightly drooped, allowing the rich and powerful people in the stands to wantonly size her up and evaluate her body. They constantly raised the stakes in the gambling house, causing the atmosphere to heat up even more. Cragburst's mouth didn't stop cursing the moment she walked through the tunnel. He turned his head to look at the spectator stands in all four directions. He just wanted to find someone he didn't like and give them a fierce beating. The problem was, there wasn't a single person in the entire arena that he didn't want to beat up. Has Jack been found yet? Cragburst paid special attention to the referee of this match. Unfortunately, it wasn't Jack. This made him even more vexed. Luo Nan didn't respond. Right now his mental senses had already covered the entire fighting arena. With this as the center, it covered a vast area with a radius of over 500 meters. It was equal to encompassing the greater half of the Deshang building within it. Even though the sensing range was slightly reduced due to the differences in the building materials and the interference of the radio waves, and the precision was still on the millimeter level, it was not a reason why Jack could not be captured. The modified human seemed to have completely evaporated. At this time, Rue Wen's opponent was already on stage. Ignoring the string of meaningless titles, it was a stout and robust man who looked no less than 2 or 3 times bigger than Rue Wen. He didn't look like a 15 or 16-year-old child at all. However, the spectators in the stands were already used to it. They cheered and egged the contestant on as well. "Dope boy. Come on, powder keg, it's time to explode." They're going to do it on stage. They're so compatible. Luo Nan's attention was drawn back. He was a complete layman in the field of fighting. He only had a vague concept of heavyweight and the like. He couldn't help but worry for Rue Wen when he saw the eye-catching contrast of body shapes in the boxing ring. Cragburst was quite disdainful of the fat man. A fellow who uses drugs to stimulate his maturation. If he continues like this, he won't even need to go on stage. His own weight will crush his bones. But it had to be said that this sort of thing like drug stimulation was very common in the underground fighting arenas. Rue Wen might have also taken some sort of drug to suppress the development of her secondary sexual characteristics. Otherwise, as a girl with an innately deficient physique, it would have been very difficult for her to obtain 100 victories. When all was said and done, Cragburst and Luo Nan had no idea what was going on. In the end, Cragburst could only comfort him. "I'm here. Even if something unexpected happens, I can save him." Ink spread its wings and slapped Cragburst's face. This fellow didn't know how to talk. Do we need you to save them? The crux of the problem was that Ru Wen's current mental state and state were inconceivably clear and bright. But once she was destroyed by an external force, the damage to her mind would be extremely frightening. It would be much more troublesome than a pure physical injury. Luo Nan had just analyzed this point from the human-faced arachnid, but he was unable to explain it to Crag Burst. He felt stifled to the extreme. The exchange between the two was meaningless, but the development of the fight on the boxing stage caught everyone off guard. After a full 20 minutes of prelude, atmosphere, and bets, the battle began. Faced with an opponent who was at least twice as heavy as her, Ru Wen didn't retreat, but instead advanced. She rushed in from the front, and before Gunpowder Barrel's thick arms could close in, she had already broken his tibia with a single kick. Just as Gunpowder Barrel's fingers touched Ru Wen's shoulder, he lost his balance and fell to the ground in pain. Ru Wen easily broke away from his grasp, and took the opportunity to kick him in the head, sending him into an unconscious state. The battle ended just like that. The originally heaven-flipping scene turned cold and silent in an instant. The vast majority of people, including the wealthy guests who won their bets, were unable to accept such a simple and laughable ending. They sunk into an awkward silence. Originally, the wagered fight was just a pastime. What they truly wanted to see was the cruel and bloody scene of fists hitting flesh. Crag Burst's wild laughter and his celebratory action of raising his arms and brandishing his fists were exceptionally eye-catching under this bizarre atmosphere. Even the cameras that covered the entire arena gave him a close-up. Luo Nan wanted ink to smack Crag Burst's head. If this wasn't exposure, then what was? On the boxing stage, the referee was stupefied for a few seconds before going forward to examine the injury. This was just a formality. His true intention was to use this opportunity to get in contact with the person in charge and figure out what to do next. However, the big boss of the fighting arena, Jack, was unable to be contacted from beginning to end. In the end, it was the supervisor who spoke up and let the referee smooth things over first. The referee helplessly got up and grabbed Ru Wen's hand, preparing to announce the victor. But Ru Wen pushed his hand away. Then she borrowed the help of the referee's miniature microphone to say a few simple words. I choose the road of adjudication. It was as if a bomb had been forcefully shoved into the oppressive and awkward atmosphere of the fighting arena with these words. First came the low clamor of several hundred people. Then came the sounds of cheering, laughing, cursing, and whistling. They flooded the entire fighting arena. The atmosphere exploded in an instant, wishing it could flip over the entire Deshang building. Aha! Challenger. Traitor. The flat-chested witch's counterattack. Stupid woman. Has your brain turned into muscle? Go die. Just tear her to shreds. No. Break her 4 limbs. Knock out her teeth. I want it. I want it. The several hundred rich and powerful spectators had personally drawn up the rules. They had designed a seemingly magnanimous path of escape. But when this rule was finally challenged, not many people could remain calm. The so-called magnanimity was just a symbolic footnote they made for their lofty status. Touching it was an offense. So in the end, all the emotions converged together to transform into a uniform howl. Adjudication. 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 The referee also returned to his senses from the unexpected change. He actually felt that he had been saved. A laughable battle that had been doused in cold water had suddenly turned into a large bomb that ignited everyone's emotions. Good. At this time, the projectors all over the fighting arena had already taken advantage of the opportunity to broadcast information related to the road of adjudication. Various images flashed in succession, listing the 3 deathly steps of King of Fists, Beast King Battle, and Adjudication Battle. The first 2 stages, as their names implied, were fights with true adult fighters and wild and untamed beasts. Only then was it the 3rd stage. The projector timely displayed the image of a calm and callous white man wearing a referee uniform. Adjudicator, Jack. The gang leader here, the gold medal host, the referee, and the murderer who had killed Ru Wen's brother, was precisely the boss of the final stage. Each projector also timely displayed the scene of many contestants, including Ru Wen's brother, dying at the hands of this callous referee. The fighting arena emitted a sharp whistling sound with each life disappearing until it finally stopped at the scene of Jack waving his hands and denying everything. The entire fighting arena was about to boil over. Chapter 112. Luo Nan's soul body stood towering amidst this wanton and rushing torrent of emotions. Originally, he should have been angry, but from his unique perspective, he saw Rue 1, who continued to stand silently on the fighting stage after her words. He also saw her spiritual seed that was submerged in the turbid flow, yet remained untainted from beginning to end by a speck of dust. A wondrous calm arrived. Just like this, Luo Nan looked down from high above, coldly looking down at the several hundred warped faces. His mental senses were like a large net that didn't let anything through. It covered every nook and cranny within a 500-meter radius. At the same time, it included the emotional movements of every single person. The vast majority of people were fanatical, but there were some people who were a bit special. For example, this person was a bit impatient. Luo Nan's attention naturally shifted. This was a certain VIP room in the upper part of the fighting arena. A man dressed in a suit and leather shoes was pacing endlessly in the room, shouting, "Jack! Jack! Damn it! I know you heard me." The high-priority communicator crackled with static extremely clearly. A voice transmitted back approximately 2 seconds later, "What's up?" "Found it." Luo Nan instantly focused his attention, increasing his precision in all aspects. He felt that it wasn't enough, so he simply shifted his soul body over. He was in the VIP room, sticking to the back of the contact's neck to receive the message from the communicator. The contact was excited to finally get in touch with that damned Jack. He never would have thought that there was a spirit behind him that was receiving the message at the same time as him. In fact, the information Luo Nan received far exceeded that of the contact. After increasing his precision, Luo Nan was able to see not only the tangible substance, but he was also able to capture the interweaving electrical waves in the air. It was impossible for Luo Nan to know the information transmitted by the electrical waves due to his lack of the ability to transform and analyze. However, he was able to refer to the continuous interweaving and spreading fluctuations within the communicator to determine the approximate direction. This was his first attempt, but it wasn't easy to realize a tracking in the information society where countless electrical waves interweaved and covered. Fortunately, the contact and Jack continued to communicate. The contact explained to Jack in as much detail as he could. During this time, the buzzing noise of interference continued to ring. The quality of the call was extremely bad. In the end, the contact didn't even know what he said. "Damn it, Jack. Where the hell are you?" "On the road to heaven." Jack sounded like he was doing some sort of exercise. His voice was a bit breathless. "Now isn't the time for jokes. You must come back. Immediately." "I was just about to touch heaven." "To hell with heaven. Rue 1 wants to charge through the path of adjudication." "It was Rue 1, Rue 1. Didn't you say that any news related to this woman must be reported to you immediately?" There was a sudden silence on the other side. After a full 5 seconds, Jack finally replied, "Who was in the first 2 stages?" The contact was overjoyed to see that Jack finally understood the seriousness of the matter. He quickly continued to report the latest situation. "The first obstacle is Derong, our chief combat coach. This pass is meaningless. Next stage." "But, oh my God!" The tycoons in the fighting arena all screamed like they'd gone mad. This was because Rue 1 had paid the price of bruising her wrist just a second ago. She'd made another terrifying close-quarters assault. Her knee had fiercely smashed into Rong Da's crotch. This robust man's physique wasn't inferior to Crag Burst's as he bent over in pain. Her elbow smashed into his throat, smashing his entire Adam's apple into mush. The fractured bones were displaced, and she cut open his carotid artery. Asphyxiation and arterial bleeding caused this strong man to fall to the ground, twitching as he quickly walked towards death. Rue 1 gazed at the dying man on the ground and said softly, "For the 70% eliminated." The contact was already stupefied from watching. He couldn't bear this kind of loss any longer. Rong Da was once the champion of the Underground Fighting Alliance. She must have concealed her strength. What the hell is going on here? Who taught her? Damn it, damn it, damn it. Jack already understood everything from the contact's reaction. He issued orders with a hoarse voice. "Raise the protective walls on all fronts right now. Isolate the fighting arena. Tell that group of trash that we need a certain amount of time to prepare for the Beast King battle." "Prepare for what?" "You go contact Mr. Ma. Tell him that the high-quality life and death duel he's been dreaming of has arrived. We'll send out the 100 Victory Witch, Rue 1. He only needs to bring his family's little darling over. I'll give him 10 minutes of time. Oh, Mr. Ma's collection. Jack, you're really too evil. The contact came to a sudden realization. He greatly praised Jack's way of thinking. He immediately hung up and hastily went to find someone. Rue Wen. Forget it. I'll just go with her cheap older brother. Jack removed his wristband and casually tossed it to the side. Don't anyone disturb me again. He was suddenly startled before his voice fell. He slowly raised his head. His undamaged right eye and the mechanical electronic eye focused at the same time. They stared at the empty space in front of them. He finally found it. Luo Nan's soul body appeared in this room. He also noticed Jack's reaction, but right now he was even more shocked at Jack's current location. Jack was still inside the Deshang building, but he was on the top floor of the building, the 141st floor. This landmark building of the River Wu district had a height of around 600 meters. The 141st floor was over 550 meters in height. It just so happened to exceed the range of Luo Nan's all-encompassing perception. Originally Luo Nan didn't believe that Jack would leave his usual lair and enter the privileged society that was absolutely unfriendly to gangsters like them. But the facts proved that his judgment was wrong. Not only did Jack enter, but he also arrived at the top floor of the Deshang building, which required extremely high credit privileges. He even had an independent training room here. At this moment, Jack was sitting in the middle of a pitch-black device whose purpose could not be seen. His body was connected to many wires, and powerful electric currents were piercing his body at every moment. Some of them even pulled out beautiful blue electric currents in the air. Is it charging the altered human right now? Jack's eyes were constantly changing focus. The end of the air was a wall. But before the wall, there was a reaction that made him vigilant. It appeared without end. A special scanner was installed in his body. The naked eye and the electronic eye received light waves of all frequencies and compared them with the surrounding environment. The data was calculated and processed to form an image. In the end, what appeared on his optic nervous system was an image that was as fuzzy as a shadow. He paused for a moment before speaking in a hoarse voice. Ability user? Soul configuration? Luo Nan was truly shocked. The electromagnetic gun attack on the recycling stratum really wasn't a coincidence. This Jack seemed to have some sort of method that could capture the existence of a soul body. His soul body floated a few times in the room. He discovered that although Jack's gaze was a bit sluggish, it was always able to rapidly change. This was a situation that had never happened before. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.